Yo guys, it's RyugaXD. You already know YouTube has its limit size, so if you want to see the spicier, uncensored, and exclusive stuff I can't post here, check out my Patreon. That's where I drop all my 18+ lemon content, early uploads, and more. Links in the description. Come join the fun. Kuo Academy. Located in Kuo Town, this esteemed educational establishment serves pupils in all primary school through high school. Due to Kuo Academy's advanced curriculum, which frequently involves no expense being spared to ensure that their academy has all the resources necessary to remain the best in the world, the school enjoys such a high level of prestige that many higher education institutions frequently seek out graduates from it. Kuo Academy used to be an all-girls school, but a recent policy change made it a mixed-gender institution that allows men to attend. Only the best or those personally chosen by the headmaster were permitted to attend, despite the fact that many people applied to fulfill their wet dream of owning a harem due to the incredibly skewed ratio of males to females. The two great ladies, RyugaXD Harem and Akano Himehime, are the president and vice president of the Occult Research Club, or ORC for short. Their peers have given them nicknames that reflect their status as the best students in this prestigious academy. Students at Kuo Academy believe that RyugaXD Harem is the most beautiful girl. Her buxom assets and slender yet voluptuous figure make her stand out. In addition to being taller than the typical girl, RyugaXD has more assets than everyone in the school, with the exception of one. Her gorgeous crimson-red hair, which resembles blood, fell to her thighs, and her side bangs, which fell to her eye-catching and voluptuous bust, covered her forehead. A single ahoge fell forward towards her face, highlighting her flawless, unblemished ivory skin. Her regal features seemed to make her appear more than human, and her captivating blue-green eyes captured many people's attention. She was currently wearing the fall and winter versions of the Kuo Academy girls' uniform, which included a deep black ribbon necktie, a magenta skirt with a white stripe that encircled the skirt a few inches above the bottom, and a white underlayer with sharp edges that peeked out beneath the skirt to give the impression of frills coming from the bottom. The white long-sleeved, button-down dress shirt with a thin vertical black pinstripe highlighted her rather impressive bust. Just past RyugaXD's modesty, the skirt itself ended. All of this was concealed by a midnight black button-down corset with 4 points that extended past her skirt and were accentuated by a thin white line that ran along the corset's outer edges. A short black shoulder cape draped over her shoulders was accentuated by a thin white line that, like the corset, followed the cape's edge. She had white, crew-length hair and brown loafers. Although some would argue that Akano Himehime was the most beautiful girl at Kuo Academy, many people thought she was the second most attractive. In any case, there was no denying her beauty. No one was particularly interested in the fact that he was a few inches shorter than RyugaXD. Rather, more attention was focused on her many attractive features. She shares a slim yet voluptuous figure with her best friend RyugaXD, but her bust was noticeably larger than RyugaXD's, which Akano publicly displayed against her friend. She is regarded as the perfect Yamato Nadeshiko because of her impeccable ivory skin and her captivating amethyst eyes, which highlight her delicate and elegant features and demonstrate her refined lady of etiquette. She had two ahoge that sloped backward, and her long, flowing, midnight black hair fell to her ankles even though it was tied up with an amazing orange ribbon. Her side bangs hung past her large bust, while her forehead was covered by them. Like RyugaXD, she wore the fall and winter uniform of the Kuo Academy girls, complete with a shirt that emphasized her impressive bust. Like RyugaXD, she wore a magenta skirt that barely covered her modesty, revealing more of her striking thighs. In addition, she wore knee-high black socks that complemented her striking ivory legs. Kaneko Tuju, a first-year student and Occult Research Club member, is the school's mascot. Being noticeably shorter than the majority of Kuo Academy's high school students, Kaneko is a small girl. Her hair, which is as white as newly fallen snow, is shoulder-length and styled in a bob cut at the back. Her side bangs ended just short of her developing bust, while her loose bangs hid her forehead. On both sides of her hair, just above her temples, she also wears a black cat-shaped hair clip. She has smooth, flawless porcelain skin and soft golden eyes that, if you were to look into them, would not show emotion. She did not wear the shoulder cape, but she did wear the fall and winter uniform of the girls, just like her senpai of the Occult Research Club. In addition, she wore black socks that were knee-high, which contrasted sharply with her porcelain skin. Kiba Yuto, a second-year student and member of the Occult Research Club, is the prince of Kuo. To the chagrin of many of the other male students at Kuo Academy, Kiba is regarded as one of the most attractive young men enrolled there. He first got his nickname because of his breathtaking good looks. He was a boy with a rather lean build that could have been mistaken for skinny from a distance, soft bisque skin in the sunlight, and long, soft golden hair with long bangs that covered his forehead and almost concealed his stunning blue-gray eyes that looked like storm clouds with the sun shining behind them. To many of the girls on campus, he was described as a prince because of the small mole under his right eye. He was dressed in the Kuo Academy fall and winter boys uniform, which included brown loafers, black-gray slacks, and a long-sleeved white button-down shirt with thin black pinstripes underneath a black blazer with white trim around the collar, hemline of the buttons, and cuffs. A black ribbon was tied around the collar. And the star of Kuo, Naruto Namikaze, whose mere presence is comparable to that of Rias and Akino, who gained notoriety fast despite being a transfer student at the beginning of the previous year. Both the reluctant males and the entire female population at Kuo Academy consider Naruto to be the most attractive young man. Since most of them expressed agreement, it was assumed that all of the girls shared this opinion. Because of how alluring and breathtaking his regal features appeared to be, there were rumors that they had divine origins. It was said that his smile was as captivating as a clear starry sky and as brilliant as the sun. Because of his charisma, Naruto was able to make friends with nearly everyone he spoke to. Actually, it was extremely uncommon for someone to genuinely hate Naruto, and nobody from Kuo Academy had ever witnessed such an act. One thing Kuo Academy students should remember is that anyone who was discovered to dislike the blonde was subject to the wrath of the Namikaze fan club, which is almost exclusively made up of girls. This made many of the boys who attend Kuo Academy jealous. His blonde hair, which was so brilliant that it seemed to have been spun from the sun's light as it flowed upward, giving it the appearance of a golden fire, complemented his divine features. His bangs partially covered his forehead. His blonde hair complemented his bisque skin, which was smooth and appeared to be flawless. His captivating blue eyes are as deep as the ocean on a sunny day. His slender body is accentuated with toned muscles that are appropriate for the Adonis he was perceived as. Like Kiba, he wore the Kuo Academy uniform for the fall and winter, but he stood out from the others because his necktie was burnt orange instead of the usual black. Many male students attempted to do something similar after witnessing the female population swoon, but they were quickly discouraged because the girls claimed it was only effective for blondes. Naruto is an almost unmatched student who is frequently viewed as the bane of the male population because almost all of the females swoon and squeal when he is around, diverting their focus from the other boys. However, Kiba Yuto never seemed to mind. Sona Shitori, the president of the student council, is the only person who can match him academically. Nobody can match him physically. Sona's body is slender but somewhat voluptuous, emphasizing her legs and hips. She is regarded as the third most beautiful girl at Kuo because she shares Rias's regal features. However, because Sona is regarded as the most intelligent of the female population at Kuo, her beauty is more in line with that of an intellectual beauty than a traditional beauty like Rias and Akino. She wears electric violet oval glasses to complement her gorgeous royal purple eyes and smooth, flawless ivory complexion. She has a gold hair clip over each ear and her shadow black hair is cut into a short bob cut. Sona is dressed in the girls' fall and winter uniform, just like Rias and Akino. She wore knee-high white socks that accentuated her calves, and her skirt ended just below her modesty, highlighting her striking and toned thighs. Naruto, a third-year student like Rias, Akino, and Sona, was being escorted out of Kuo Academy by his maid and caretaker as he entered the front gates. "Have a good day, Naruto-sama. Do your best," exclaimed his caregiver, who was standing at the gate, shouting out to him and waving to the blonde. With her hands stacked on top of each other at her hips, his maid merely smiled slightly. After giving a joyful wave in return, Naruto turned around and entered the school. Given that he was also wealthy, many of the female students at the school viewed him as an even greater prize after learning that he had a maid. On the day he first arrived, some of the male population had an issue with Naruto because he attracted the attention of the female population. They decided to be antagonistic toward him in front of his maid and caregiver because of this injustice. No one was hostile to the blonde after that day. The chatter and squeals of the female population filled the courtyard as he made his way to the main school building. The student council had to show up and order the students to disperse and attend class because things were getting out of control. Fortunately, they were still visible to his maid and caretaker, so they didn't have to worry about the girls jumping him. Kaneko watched the scene from a distance. To the amusement of her seniors in the occult research club, the first-year student had developed her first crush on the blonde. The day she first noticed him attracting the interest of her seniors, the normally stoic Kaneko had not consumed her typical quantity of sweets. In the old school building's occult research club room, Ryus, Akeno, Kiba, and Kaneko were assembled. Although it can still see into the courtyard of the refurbished grounds, the old school building is just out of the way of the new structures that were built to accommodate a larger student body. The ORC's club room is located inside, and as a result, the building's interior was refurbished to create a more occult-like atmosphere. This was achieved by using oil lamps as light sources and thicker, darker curtains to cover the windows. Additionally, a healthy renovation was made to the Occult Research Club room. Its interior is now in the Gothic Victorian style, complete with oil lamps mounted on the wall that create a spooky yet seductive ambiance. The wallpaper was a dark gray, flat, and seemed to be embellished with flame-like line art. There is a large walk-in shower in the corner of the room that looks like it could accommodate more than one person. It is next to a large desk that looks like it was well made from some very expensive wood. On the right side of the desk is a quill stand that holds 3 quills and a bottle of ink, and on the left corner is a candle holder. A chair that resembles a throne and has royal purple cushions built into it is located behind the desk. There were 2 dark green cushioned Victorian-style couches facing each other in front of the desk, and a dark stained coffee table between them. All of these were situated above a large square royal purple rug, and a chandelier with multiple candle holders made it easier to light the room with the help of the other light sources. A double door leading to a live-in apartment and 2 windows overlooking the schoolyard are located across from each of the couches. Ryus was seated behind the desk as Akeno set small serving plates and teacups on the coffee table and served tea and snacks. Kaneko was seated on the couch facing the double doors, and Kiba was seated across from her. "Kaneko-chan, are you okay?" Ryus inquired in concern. Ryus wasn't the only one worried. Kaneko nodded slightly and said, "I'm fine, Bucha." Concerned about their kahai were Akeno and Kiba as well. Kaneko would typically be gorging herself on candy like she had never eaten before, all the while acting with the dignity that one would expect from a member of high society. But now, sitting on one of the couches in the Occult Research Club with her knees tucked into her chest, she had hardly touched the candies that Akeno had spread out. Looking at her, Kaneko didn't seem to be in a bad mood. She actually looked kind of happy. The club members were a little perplexed by this because Kaneko typically wears a stoic expression, but right now there's a faint upward tilt to the side of her lips. In an attempt to solve the mystery, Ryus, Kiba, and Akeno gathered in front of the redhead's opulent desk and started a lowly conversation, offering suggestions and ideas while observing the white-haired girl's passive responses to their remarks. They didn't notice Kaneko's slight twitch until Kiba brought up the name Naruto. When they put the pieces together, the 3 realized what was causing Kaneko to feel happy. "Era," was said by an overly endearing Akeno as she walked up to the seated Kaneko, making the younger girl's neck stand up. Akeno sat next to the girl with the golden eyes and inquired, "Does little Kaneko-chan have a crush on her blonde senpai?" Kaneko kept her head down and remained silent. Kaneko didn't nod in response to Akeno's question until Ryus approached and placed her hand on their girl's head. "Ah," exclaimed Ryus, "our little Kaneko-chan has a crush." Kiba grinned and moved to the couch across from Kaneko, where the women were seated. "That's very admirable of you, Kaneko-chan," he said, grinning charmingly. "Yeah," said Ryus enthusiastically. With stars in her eyes, she exclaimed, "Don't worry, Kaneko-chan, we will help you win the blonde studs, heart." Era Bucha, you're not thinking of this like one of your shoujo manga, are you?" Kaneko stared blankly at her club president as Ryus instantly froze. Since then, Ryus had contacted her friend Sona to find out more about Naruto Namikaze by looking through his school records and any information Japan might have on him. They then discovered that he comes from 2 extremely wealthy families, the Namikaze and the Uzumaki, and that he has an older brother named Menma Namikaze, demonstrating his amazing lineage. Although it was known that both families had been wealthy for generations since the Renaissance in the case of the Namikaze and the Edo period in Japan, Ryus and Sona were taken aback by the Uzumaki's lineage. In actuality, a large number of their families' businesses collaborated closely with the 2 families' businesses. The Uzumaki family was also associated with a legend that claimed they negotiated a peace treaty between angels and devils, although many people found it difficult to accept. A stunned Ryus asked, "Sona-san, are you sure he is from both the Namikaze and the Uzumaki families?" Sona nodded in response, having just put down her teacup. "I am. My sources tell me he hasn't seen his mother in a little over 10 years, however she has kept close tabs on him. However, what has stood out more is his performance in other schools he attended prior to coming to Kuo. That piece of information caught Ryu's attention. Apparently, he performed to such an outstanding level that he was forced to leave the schools to attend greater institutions, exceeding his Oni-san by an incredible margin, which is what led him to coming to Kuo, as this appears to be the only non-college level institution he hasn't exceeded. His presence has also led to the speedy construction of the college campus on Kuo so as to not fall behind academically with a student who rivals myself. Neither of the girls could believe what they learned about the blonde Adonis. A distressed Ryus thought, oh, Kaneko-chan is going to have quite a tough time getting his attention. Kaneko did not give much thought to his status, despite what she was told. His soothing presence and warm aura drew her in. It wasn't a bad thing either that he was always helpful and kind to everyone. She was currently observing from the top of one of the numerous trees that border the school's main walkway, hissing softly at all the girls who were applauding and yelling for Naruto's attention. Ryus and Akeno, meanwhile, were in the old school building, gazing at the school through the large open window. Akeno laughed and said, Era, is our dear Kaneko-chan watching her crush again? Ryus just grinned without replying. She knew full well that Akeno had the answer to that query. Akeno spoke into her hand, it's not healthy for her to keep stalking him like that. Ryus replied, her smile never leaving her face, sooner or later, she'll become a pervert with such behavior. You better not let Kaneko-chan hear you say that, or else she may give you her frozen stare. The bell ringing to announce the start of the school day was followed by the words, fu. She would never do that to her, Akeno-senpai, or else she may lose out on her sweets. As the semester went on, the third-year students showed up for gym class. They spent the day outside competing in track events. Takagawa-sensei was in charge of the class, and he was currently dealing with the students running obstacles. The fact that Ryus and Akeno's opai jiggled and bounced with every jump they made was undoubtedly unrelated to it. However, because none of the girls could focus when they saw the star of Kuo working out, the rest of the school decided to have a free period. All boys, with the exception of Kiba, detested this time of day because it was when Naruto unintentionally embarrassed them all. He performed as usual when it was his turn to run the hurdles. 30 hurdles stood in his way. To give the other students an equal opportunity to earn points for their grades, they had to raise the number he ran. Takagawa was on his right, and Naruto was in the sprinter's starting position. With his stopwatch in his other hand, Takagawa lifted his right hand. Ready, go, he exclaimed, severing his hand. Naruto appeared as a blur for a moment before blasting off from his position with the given word. His form, which many Olympic athletes strive to perfect, allowed him to leap over the first hurdle with ease. Before achieving his stride of 3 at a time, he cleared 2 hurdles for his first leap. Unfortunately, he cleared 4 instead of 3 after overshooting his final jump. Knowing he wouldn't have enough space to execute a standard jump, he instead leapt high into the air, clearing more than 10 feet from the bottom of his shoes. He then executed a 180-degree twist flip, landed in a crouch, threw his left leg back, and used the momentum to turn around before standing tall and grinning endearingly. The sounds of female squeals and cheers filled the school. One could swear that the school was moving in time with the cheers because it was so intense. Naruto displayed his amazing body when he lifted his shirt to wipe the perspiration from his brow because it was such a hot day. The girls in his class could follow the sweat that traced the cervixes created by his muscles because his body was adorned with the kind of muscle definition that one would see on a low-weight bodybuilder, such as side abs and six-pack abs. Ryus and Akeno witnessed such a scene because they were in his class. Akeno whispered to her closest friend while licking her lips. Ryus, for her part, was at a loss for words once more. Era, no matter how many times I see those I can't help but want to taste. She would have sworn that God had created his body if she hadn't known his family was human. Kaneko was enjoying the show just like the other girls, but she was also feeling possessive of the boy she hadn't yet spoken to and was radiating a great deal of rage as she listened to her peers' twisted thoughts. Akeno laughed, sensing Kaneko's possessive aura. Era, it seems our dear Kaneko-chan is quite the jealous type. Fu. When Naruto heard the numerous girls calling his name, he turned to face the school and gave a courteous wave that almost killed all of the female students there. Kuo Academy was now going through their lunch period as the Naruto period came to an end. Naruto would also go missing during this period, according to the female population. He actually took advantage of the time to nap close to the old school building because, as far as he knew, nobody was there. As it happened, Kaneko once discovered him sprawled out on the grass like he was creating an angel in the grass. She has been going to sit next to Naruto while he naps ever since. With a gentle smile, Kaneko walked quietly over to her sleeping crush, who was resting under the nearby trees' shade. Though she would tell you it was to make sure he was okay with her usual deadpan stare, she really wanted to cuddle up to him and feel his warm aura more intimately. Kaneko walked slowly on the soft grass so as not to wake him. She appeared to be a cat on the prowl as she approached, crouching close to the ground. She saw that his school bag was open and that a pristine white envelope protruded from the top, seemingly open because the wax seal on the front was broken, just as she was ready to lay down and curl into his bare side. Kaneko silently reached for the letter, her curiosity overwhelming her. She sat next to Naruto, staring at the envelope in her hands with her knees tucked into her chest so that, if one looked at her head directly, one could see her white underwear. "I should return this. I'm not going to read it. But," she said, shaking her head to get those ideas out of her head. Despite her thoughts, Kaneko opened the envelope and discovered a letter with some tear stains on it. "No, it's his letter. I should put it back." Kaneko was even more intrigued after opening the letter and reading what was inside. Her tiny smile turned back to her typical stoic face as she read the letter, and she started crying too. Her usual stoicism failing to conceal her feelings, she folded the letter, put it back in his bag, and walked quietly out of the shaded area and into the Occult Research Club room. Meanwhile, in the Occult Research Club room, Ryus and Akeno were having lunch and talking about the recent class period and the incredible commotion that a certain blonde had caused. Ryus and Akeno were startled when the room's door suddenly opened rather forcefully. They turned to face the door and saw Kaneko enter with her typical expression of stoicism. But if you were to look into her eyes, you could see how upset and depressed she was. "Kaneko-chan," Ryus uttered. But Kaneko remained silent and sat down as usual. She took a throw pillow, pulled it close to her, raised her knees to her chest, and buried her face in it as she settled into her usual spot on the couch. Ryus and Akeno were able to hear Kaneko's muffled cries because of the room's silence. The two hurried to Kaneko's side and embraced her tightly, cradling her between their abundant mountains. This made her feel less depressed because she was a little envious that she wasn't as good as her two senpai. Ryus tried to soothe Kaneko's kahai by stroking the back of her head. When her sobbing subsided, Ryus asked, "Kaneko-chan, what happened?" After a few more sniffles, Kaneko responded with her typical stoic demeanor, but her voice seemed to break as she spoke. Ryus had a bad feeling. She could guess what was in the letter, but she still listened. "I found Naruto-san sleeping outside the club building. When I went to lie next to him, I saw a letter. I was curious so I took it." Conversely, Akeno, she laughed and said, Era Kaneko-chan, you sly kitty you, I didn't take you for a thief." Kaneko lifted her head from her pillow and gave Akeno a glare, but the tears that were still in her eyes clouded her vision. With a glare of her own, Ryus said, "Don't mind her, Kaneko-chan." Then she turned back to Kaneko and said, "Please continue." Kaneko nodded meekly before continuing. The news was undoubtedly shocking to the two, but Kaneko was not finished. "When I opened the envelope, I saw tear stains on the letter. I opened it because I was curious. When I read the letter, Kaneko's tears returned in full force, causing the two to clutch the shorter of the three. "I learned he is in an arranged marriage," Kaneko said, "and that she will be arriving at Kuo tomorrow." Ryus felt sorry for her kahai now. She was married to a man she absolutely hated in an arranged marriage. She could relate to Kaneko's heartbreak, even though she wasn't sure if Naruto was in the same situation. After all, she had frequently witnessed the heroine's heart being shattered by her love being coerced into an arranged marriage in some of her shoujo stories. In her tales, the hero and heroine would battle to stay together, and their love would see them through their hardships so they could succeed and lead happy, fulfilling lives. Before long, Ryus had an idea, and a fire ignited in her eyes, shocking Kaneko and captivating Akeno. "Don't worry, Kaneko-chan, we will help you show your love to Naruto-san so you and he can break his marriage contract and allow your love to flourish," said the brunette. Akeno had to hide her laughter by covering her mouth. Era, it seems like Bucha is getting excited about her manga once more, Akeno thought. Kaneko, who was doubtful, questioned, "Are you sure that will work, Bucha?" She declared, "Of course. After all, true love conquers all," as she stood there with a crashing wave in the background. "But it hasn't helped you," Kaneko said, glancing down at the ground. Rias clutched her chest as though she had been hit by an arrow. She collapsed on the couch, surrounded by a depressed atmosphere. Era Kaneko-chan, that's not very nice. That elicited no response from Kaneko. As she answered, Rias regained some of her strength. Well, you can't just do nothing, Kaneko-chan. If you don't at least tell him how you feel, it will haunt you for the rest of your life. No matter how much you don't believe me, I don't want you to live with that regret. After all, everyone deserves happiness, she replied with an awkward grin. Kaneko regretted bringing up a sensitive topic with Rias. To console her Bucha, she released her pillow and put her arms around Rias's waist. Instead of engaging in regular activities after school, the orc came up with ideas to help Kaneko attract the attention of the school's top male idol. The big day had arrived. It was time for Naruto's fiancé copyright to show up. In order to get a good view of Kaneko's competition, the orc members positioned themselves on the top floor of the main school building, which overlooked the entrance, for the major event. Few students noticed that Naruto's caretaker did not send him off as enthusiastically as she usually did when he arrived on school property. Additionally, Kaneko observed that Naruto's aura had lost some of its warmth. He seemed to be smiling as if nothing was wrong, but if she had to sum it up, it would be like attempting to feel the warmth of the sun through a cloudy day. The orc students had to wait a long time because a new student didn't show up until long after Naruto entered the building. It was reasonable to assume that she was Naruto's fiancé copyrightee because she was new. Their observations were not encouraging for Kaneko. There was a long, classy black limousine in front of the school. It was longer than most students had ever seen outside of manga or anime. Since the group could now confirm they were facing someone from a very wealthy family, this immediately raised a number of red flags. However, given that they are attempting to end an arranged marriage, that was to be expected. All of the students were undoubtedly drawn to the limo, but none of the ORC knew what to say when the driver got out. The girl was dressed in the Kuo Academy girl's uniform, but she gave it a more royal appearance than it actually had. A girl who could compete with Rias for the title of most attractive student in the school emerged from the limousine. Her long, flowing blonde hair, which shone like polished gold, fell to her knees. Her side bangs reached slightly above her shoulders but never touched them, and her bangs were parted down the middle. Her eyes resemble polished citrine, her lips are naturally soft pink, and her lashes are as long as those of a romanticized royal from long ago. She walked with the grace of a woman who was destined to be a queen, and her figure was strikingly similar to that of Akeno and Rias. While Kiba was trying his best not to look at the woman, the girl's jaws were on the verge of dropping when they saw her. Kaneko's body consciousness increased even further. She started to doubt herself after seeing her competitors. Rias acted quickly after sensing her Kahai's distress. Nay, Kaneko-chan. Don't let her appearance get you down. You still have a chance. Kaneko stated bluntly, you're just saying that because you and her have a similar figure. Although it made the redhead wonder, Rias had no disagreement on that point. Could she be AA as well? Rias asked. All activity seemed to come to a screeching halt as the newcomer entered the academy's gates, leaving everyone in awe of the new girl. The girls appeared to stand motionless as they gazed at the blonde, while the boys all bowed down in a kowtow before her. The whole occult research club started to have uneasy feelings about the girl as she approached the school building. Akeno asked, Bucha, do you feel that? With surprise. As she nodded, Rias took on a severe expression. The other members, particularly Kaneko, who was now tired of the girl and concerned for her crush, were drawn to the statement, yes Akeno-chan, I feel it. It's faint but I can feel it. She has very powerful magical reserves. Rias and Akeno learned the girl's name as Esme Lafayette in class. Her Japanese seemed perfect despite her rather strong French accent. With the exception of Naruto, who showed little interest in the girl, her smile almost killed the few men present. Ahem. Thank you, Lafayette-san, Bawako-sensei said. Please take a seat so we may begin our lessons. Esme smiled and bowed respectfully to the teacher before approaching Naruto, who was seated in the middle row by the window. She glanced at the girl seated beside him and gave her a charming smile. She said politely, pardon me. Do you mind if I sit here? As soon as Rias and Akeno sensed magic being used on the girl, they became vigilant. The girl quickly got up from her seat and ran to a vacant seat, letting Esme sit next to Naruto, whom she started to admire. In the meantime, Rias and Akeno were observing Esme with suspicion, attempting to ascertain her identity. Kaneko got her chance to see Esme when the Naruto era came. Sadly, As she watched the woman embrace Naruto's arm, she had to listen to the nearby students either compliment her beauty or fantasize about her seductive figure, which did not lessen her anger. Many of the girls were enamored with the scene after seeing this action. But if one looked closely enough, they would notice that even though Naruto was smiling his best, it seemed forced, as though he didn't like the way the woman was hanging off of him. In her rage, Kaneko, for her part, almost broke the window with her hand resting against it. Rias and Akino observed that Esme appeared to be disinterested in the gym class as it started. The two, posing as anxious classmates, approached her to ask if she was okay. Rias attracted Esme's attention by approaching her with their warmest smiles. "Excuse me, Lafayette-san. My name is Rias Gramori, this is my friend Akino Himahima. We were curious if you were alright as you don't seem to be participating in class." Esme gave the students around her a courteous smile and bow without missing a beat. The two great ladies noticed her eyes dart to Naruto as she said, "Ah, it's great to meet you, Gramori-san, Himahima-san. To answer your question, I am just fine. I just do not believe it is appropriate for a lady to appear improper before anyone aside from her husband. I mean surely you two understand, being of such a noble status yourselves," said Esme. Her words caused Rias and Akino to stiffen. In an attempt to conceal her nervousness, Rias asked, "What makes you think I am a noble?" Esme gave the question a critical glance. When Rias's older brother was being reprimanded, she seemed to adopt the tone of a professor lecturing a student, which Rias had heard far too frequently. "It is fairly obvious. The poise with which you walk, the tempo of each step you take and of course the way you interact with those around you is far too practiced for one of a common birth." Then she looked over at Akino. As for Himahima-san, although she has many of the same traits, her posture and gait have been so perfected that she seems to be gliding rather than walking, a skill attained through many hours of instruction one would find in a noble house. Esme turned her head away and started to eye Naruto, who was about to take his turn on the track, before Rias could say anything more. "Excuse me ladies," she said in a very formal manner while bowing politely, "because it is in my best interest to know everything about him, I must take note of how well Naruto-san performs." Rias narrows her eyes at Esme after being dismissed, and Akino raises her right hand in a menacing gesture before turning and leaving to avoid doing something they might or might not regret. While the girls were chatting, Naruto was preparing to run his laps, doing his pre-workout stretches, which many of the girls thought were a show, while the boys thought he was bragging. Before long, Takagawa-sensei called on Naruto for his turn to run the track, and while Kaneko was observing his eyes, the girls' eyes were fixed on various parts of his body, specifically those that they found attractive. She whispered, "Good luck," to the blonde Adonis, but the other students could not hear her. As he stood up to his full height, Naruto gave his normally endearing smile, which Kaneko could see was still being forced, and he ran his allotted laps, setting a new school record as he slid across the finish line. "I'll never understand why you don't join any athletic clubs, Namikaze-san," Takagawa-sensei said, scratching his head before writing down Naruto's time for class records. "With times like yours you could easily become a world-class athlete," Takagawa-sensei said, letting out a sigh and shaking his head. Naruto, for his part, rubs his back of his head shyly, his heartbreaking smile now in place. "Sorry sensei, but I have other obligations that take up my time after school." No matter how many times he tries to persuade Naruto to join a school team, Takagawa-sensei sighs once more in resignation and disappointment. "Well, don't let opportunities pass you by, Namikaze-san," he says. Returning to the starting line to test his next group of students, Takagawa-sensei said, "You never know if they will ever come back, if ever." "Yes, he will do very nicely. I think I'll take him this Friday," Esme thought as a dark expression appeared in her eyes. Meanwhile, she licks her lips sensually as she looks at Naruto and likes what she sees of the blonde male, both academically and athletically. The week went by with little alteration to the routine that the students at Kuo Academy were accustomed to, but the members of the ORC were tense around Esme. In fact, it would be an understatement to say that they were tense. Although she had the attitude of a spoiled princess when it came to exercise, no one could criticize her academic skills. When Esme first arrived on campus, Rias and Akino told Sona about what they felt coming from her and about the incident in their gym class. However, since then, Esme has hardly used her powers at all, not in the classroom but sparingly around campus. In fact, the only times they felt them were when she asked about Naruto or when she convinced the students to let her be alone with the blonde Adonis, which, in Rias' words, motivated Kaneko to not let her rival get ahead. The orc and the student council were intrigued, though, when they noticed that Naruto was emitting a feeling that was similar to Esme's but much fainter. As the feeling surrounding the blonde intensified, many of his traits seemed to become more potent, his hair seemed to become more radiant, he seemed to become sharper, his amazing athleticism seemed to become even more impressive, and his eyes seemed to become even deeper pools of blue and far more captivating. In fact, his most recent track feat left many speechless. As usual, Naruto was in his sprinter's stance, with Takagawa-sensei waiting to time him. When the start signal was given, the most anime thing Rias had ever seen of a human happened. Naruto was on the starting line for a moment, then, according to the other students, he seemed to blur out of sight, then he reappeared across the line almost in the same instant that he disappeared. "Did you see that, Rias-chan?" Akeno inquired. With her eyes still wide from what she had just seen, Rias turned to her best friend and said, "Yes, Akeno-chan, I did." "Are we sure he's human?" Akeno was unable to respond since it appeared that their first impressions of the topic were wrong when Rias asked in a low voice. When he performed, the school's girls were ecstatic once more, the otakus were stunned because they had just witnessed something they had only imagined was possible in anime, the girls were even more enamored of him, and the boys had given up on trying to imitate him. When asked about his latest accomplishment by his enthusiastic peers and admirers, Naruto simply shrugged and said that his caretaker and maid always made sure to train him after school. Given their display on his first day, no one had any trouble believing him. Esme had an unnoticed devious look on her face, one that was far darker than when she first saw him run earlier in the week. A smile so devious that it would raise red flags for Kaneko and the other members of the ORC. Unfortunately, despite his amazing performance, his depressing mood only seemed to worsen, greatly upsetting Kaneko because she always seemed to see right through his fake smelesa, a trait that Rias and Akeno were picking up as they tried to help Kaneko get with her crush. Additionally, his foul mood seemed to be centered around Esme Lafayette. Even though they knew he was in an arranged marriage with the girl, there was obviously something they were missing if his mood darkened so much. As a result, the orc decided to help Kaneko get closer to Naruto. Nevertheless, despite the ORC's best efforts, Esme appeared to try her hardest to stop Kaneko from expressing her feelings for her crush by either separating Naruto from the other students or convincing the other students to let her be alone with Naruto. Despite all of the challenges that Esme unintentionally set up, Kaneko persisted and was able to either interrupt Esme's desired alone time or was able to spirit Naruto away before Esme could. The sight of Naruto and Kaneko together brought tears to the eyes of many students at the cute scene where the star of Kuo interacted with the mascot of Kuo. Rias and Akeno even intervened before Esme could use her powers on the students to let Kaneko have her moments with her crush. Naruto recognized Kaneko as a friend, and the two even became friendly enough to use each other's first names, which was much appreciated by the white-haired girl and widely applauded by the crowd. Unfortunately, Kaneko was still unable to express her feelings for her blonde crush, and the friendliness between them seemed to greatly aggravate the blonde foreigner, which had made Esme very hostile toward Kaneko when Naruto wasn't present. Rias even issued a warning to the blonde transfer student, saying, "Lafayette-san, I would appreciate it if you didn't threaten Kaneko-chan." Esme's attitude toward Kaneko was getting so bad that Rias and Akeno had to calm down the first year before she became violent with the new transfer student. Even though the threat was left ambiguous, Esme ultimately understood it and made an effort to prevent the white-haired girl from getting to know Naruto. "And if I find out you caused anything to happen to her, I will personally see to it you are removed from here." After all of the interactions during the week, Kaneko made a decision that she explained to Rias during their club meeting on Wednesday. When everyone was seated in the Occult Research Club room, Kaneko surprised everyone by putting down her cookies. Taking a deep breath, Kaneko addressed Rias, who was seated at her desk, closely observing her kahai because Kaneko was never one to refuse sweets unless they were crucial. The stoic Kaneko said, "Bucha, I am going to skip club activities Friday." Akeno and Kiba listened intently, keeping their ears open in case they needed to assist their kahai given the growing tension she and Esme had developed over the course of the week. Rias raised an eyebrow in curiosity. Rias leaned into her desk elbows, put down her pen, and crossed her hands in front of her face. "Oh, why will you not participate in club activations, Kaneko-chan?" Kaneko responded without hesitation, pulling her knees into her chest as she said, "So I can catch Naruto-kun before he leaves." This was a habit she had recently developed when a certain blonde was mentioned. With a smile and an enthusiastic nod, Ryus gave her approval and wished Kaneko luck. Hopefully he says yes and they can beat the odds against his arranged marriage, thought the redhead. Turning to the other members of her club, Ryus asked, are any of you willing to cover for Kaneko-chan on Friday? With gentle, closed-eye smiles, Kiba and Akeno both promised to assist Kaneko and take over so she could have all the time she required and perhaps even some time to celebrate if everything went according to plan. Ryus grinned enthusiastically at everyone after settling the club's details, saying, great, now that is settled, let's practice what you should say. She shouted at the end. Kiba laughed nervously. Akeno giggled behind her hand while Kaneko narrowed her eyes at her bucha. Era bucha, do you still consider Kaneko-chan's efforts to court our blonde star to be shoujo manga? Ha ha ha, she said, her tone full of laughter. With a flush as red as her hair, Ryus attempted to sink deeper into her chair, but she evaded the question by suddenly bringing out a whiteboard with a script written on it, which made Kaneko narrow her eyes suspiciously and question whether Akeno's words had any real weight. Coughing into her fist, Ryus started, let us go over the best phrases to use when confessing to your crush. The day had finally arrived for Kaneko to confess her feelings for her blonde senpai. All she needed was for the day to end. Throughout the entire day, Kaneko was so nervous that she ate almost twice as many sweets as she usually did, and before she knew it, the end of the day had arrived. She didn't even wait for the second chime of the bell to sound before grabbing her bag and running out of her classroom, greatly confusing her teacher and classmates with her sudden liveliness. She hurried down the hall, trying to avoid being stopped by Sona. As Ryus, Akeno, Naruto, and Esme gathered their belongings to leave class for the weekend, Naruto was stopped as soon as he finished packing. Naruto-san, could you please follow me? I have something I wish to discuss with you, asked Esme, wearing her sweetest smile. I have something I wish to discuss with you. Naruto nodded reluctantly, though it was well disguised, and Ryus and Akeno noticed his hidden reluctance. As he stood to follow Esme, they tried to hold the two of them up so Kaneko could arrive. Nay, Lafayette-san, may we have a brief conversation with you? I'm sorry, Grimori-san, Himahima-san, Esme said with a charming smile as she and Akeno stood in front of the two. But please excuse me as I must decline your company because of something that needs my immediate attention. Era, their adorable Kahai was going to confess today, and they were not going to let this girl get in Kaneko's way, Ryus said, narrowing her eyes as Akeno closed her eyes and smiled sweetly. It won't take long, Lafayette-san, so don't worry. You must have time for that in your schedule, don't you? Doing her best to hide her mischievous tone, Akeno asked. I'm terribly sorry, Grimori-san, Himahima-san, but I insist that you move and let me conduct my business as this is something that cannot be put off, Esme said firmly, almost threateningly, because she appeared to become agitated at the two's persistent pestering. Therefore, I beg you once more to stop obstructing my way. The two great ladies are aware of the harshness in her voice. Nay, Namikaze-san, said Akeno, grabbing his attention as she stepped closer to Naruto, I'm having trouble with my English homework, do you think you can stay for a bit and help me? I'm having trouble with my English homework, Akeno said, allowing Esme to pass after Ryus and Akeno moved aside, but that didn't mean they could install Naruto. In an attempt to entice him to stay, she even clasped her hands together and squeezed her arms together to highlight her large bust. She asked as he leaned slightly to look up adorably into his eyes. Himahima-san, don't you have to go to club events with Grimori-san? He asked, his eyes never leaving her captivating violet gems. Ryus, seeing her friend's tactic, decided to play along. No, she said as she waved off his concern. It's fine Namikaze-san. Furthermore, who am I to refuse a club member assistance if they are struggling with their homework? Her response seemed to lift Naruto's spirits, and he smiled warmly at the two of them. Esme intervened once more as Akeno was ready to put her arms around Naruto's and push his arm between her striking valley, saying, I'm sorry, but he will have to decline. Akeno pretended to be surprised as she put her hand to her mouth and locked arms with Naruto with her free arm. Oh my business is with him after all, she said arrogantly. However, it can wait while he assists a classmate, right? Even though she was unaware that the two were using stall tactics, Esme's face turned pink with rage. No, she looked directly into Naruto's eyes and said, my business takes precedence as it is business between our families. Naruto's mood fell with those words, and he was forced to ask Akeno for forgiveness because he needed to postpone helping her until he was able to slowly free himself from Akeno's hold. Rias and Akino saw Kaneko sprint past the door shortly after the two departed. It was obvious that she at least saw Naruto and Esme leaving and decided to pursue them instead of letting her crush escape. As Rias and Akino gathered their belongings and made their way to the Occult Research Club room, they thought, "Good luck, Kaneko-chan." Akino made sure to pick up Kaneko's dropped bag, which she had left at the classroom door. As Kaneko turned the corner to go to Naruto's classroom, she saw a distressed Esme and a dejected Naruto walking out of the room, heading for the stairwell at the other end of the hall. Kaneko followed them, leaving her bag for Rias or Akino to pick up and carry to the club room. Kaneko followed the couple as quietly as possible up the stairwell. "Are they going to the roof?" she asked, surprised when they stopped on the 4th floor. "Bucha said that all good confessions happen on the school roof. I can't believe I was going to do that," Kaneko thought as she watched them enter an empty classroom. Fearing the worst, since Rias had also told her that another romantic location is an empty classroom near sunset, Kaneko crept over to the door so she could see Naruto and Esme standing across from each other perpendicular to the window. She was taken aback by what she saw next. Esme conjured an almost golden magic circle with a fleur-de-lis in the center. Out of the circle came a royal purple foldable fan with what appeared to be golden fabric woven between the two ends, which she instantly unfurled and covered her mouth to reveal a blonde woman in plate armor holding a short sword and a flag raised high, though Kaneko could still see Esme's lower face due to the angle at which she was looking. "Naruto-kun," Esme said, and Naruto looked into her eyes, his blues appearing less vibrant than usual. "You are aware of the marriage contract, aren't you?" Kaneko saw Esme's self-satisfied smile from behind her fan as her eyes narrowed. Naruto simply nodded his head, a solemn expression taking over his features that matched his eyes. "Great," Esme exclaimed with joy. "So, as you are aware, I will turn you into a homunculus whenever I see fit, right?" "Amazing," Naruto said, nodding his head resignedly. "Just to let you know, the spell we use will totally deplete your magical power, which will naturally result in your death as it would for any mage. This is something that only my family is aware of. You don't object to this, do you?" Esme went on. "Of course you don't." Before Naruto could respond, "I can't argue with you because of the seal on you. Your body and non-magical abilities will still be accessible, so don't worry. To let such a body go would be a complete waste, wouldn't it?" Kaneko's heart froze when she heard those words. Her crush was going to die. Exclamation mark. No, she wouldn't let that happen. Before she could say anything more, she threw the door open so forcefully that it crashed into the wall and flew off its rails, startling the people in the room. Before anyone could react, Kaneko struck the floor with her fist, breaking it to pieces and collapsing it on the floor below. The people in the room were too stunned to react when two jet black, bat-like wings emerged from Kaneko's back as they started to fall. Kaneko flew towards Naruto and caught him bridal style before taking off through the classroom's cracked windows and into the distance as quickly as she could. After she straightened out, Esme got up and dusted herself off, then narrowed her eyes as she walked out of the room, realizing that she had to tell Naruto's maid and caretaker about his recent departure so that he could be safely brought back to her and she could have a great man by her side. Shortly after Esme left, Sona and the student council reached the door of the room where Kaneko had just collapsed. The student council's room is also on the top floor, and one of its members heard the disturbance. Curious about the disturbance, Sona quickly led the student council to the scene. The council was shocked by the condition of the room when they peered inside after Sona motioned for them to approach cautiously after noticing the door was wide open. "What happened?" the Fuku Keicho Tsubaki Shinra inquired. Tsubaki, a third-year student at Kuo Academy, is slightly taller than Sona and has a bust that is well above average but not quite on par with Rias's. Her figure is slender and somewhat curvaceous, and her beauty is almost on par with Sona's, while her thighs are on par with her Keicho's. Tsubaki is considered the fourth most popular girl at Kuo Academy because of her elegant and soft features, which include unblemished ivory skin, long, straight ebony hair that falls to just below her knees, with bangs that split down the middle of her forehead and stop just above her eyes. Her eyes are her most striking feature. They are heterochromatic, with the left being an eye-catching violet and the right being a soft brown like polished copper. She was also wearing the girls' fall and winter uniform with mid-shin-high black socks, showcasing her striking legs. In response, Sona changed her classes. "I'm not sure." Sona turned to Tsubaki and said, "Tsubaki-chan, get this room fixed up. Considering the destruction and the absence of any unsettlingly loud noise, I have an idea. We're heading to see Rias-san, so Momo-chan and Tomo-chan follow me. Momo Hanakai is a third-year student at Kuo Academy and a member of the student council. She is a stunning girl with features that are unmistakably beautiful and eye-catching, such as soft blue-green eyes that stand out against her flawless ivory skin, cloud-white hair that started to become wavy the longer it was, and side bangs that stopped halfway down her larger-than-average assets that almost rivaled Tsubaki. She was wearing the Kuo Academy fall and winter uniform, although they sadly did not go well with her legs. Tomo Meguri, a third-year student at Kuo Academy and the secretary of the student council, has very cute features, including large hazel eyes and a blush that is almost always visible on her bisque skin. She has a slim figure with a semi-curvaceous waist, her reddish-brown hair is tied in low twin tails, and she has a single ahoge that points towards her back, while her bangs crisscross over her forehead. She is dressed in the Kuo Academy fall and winter uniform, which includes knee-high black socks that draw attention to her smooth thighs. "Hi, Keicho," they all answered simultaneously. Sona then summoned a bright blue magic circle with a blue necklace in the middle beneath her, Momo, and Tomo before vanishing in a burst of light and heading to the old school building. Kiba had taken a seat on one of the room's couches while Akino started serving tea with a dessert plate of freshly baked cookies, while Rias, oblivious to what was happening inside the school, sat behind her elaborate desk in the old school building going through a number of documents that were in front of her. Thoughts of Kaneko and how well her confession went served as a pleasant diversion from the problems she was experiencing with her own arranged marriage. Although she gave the matter a lot of thought, even talking about it with her friend Sona, she was unable to find a way out of the arrangement without it turning into a rating game, which she wanted to avoid at the moment. If she were to face her repulsive fiancé copyright in a rating game, she would need strong pieces to defeat him. Rias thought harshly, all I need to do is find out she is a Manizer and you could think the two were siblings. Thinking of power made her think of Naruto and, regrettably, Esme. Although they were both more than human, they still felt human, and she knew that Kaneko and Esme did not get along, so she could not hold Kaneko responsible for that. Despite Esme's regularity, she had a frustrating personality. Naruto was still available, though, and if everything went according to plan after today, she might be able to enlist him as a means of escaping his forced marriage. His physical prowess also spoke for itself, and she just so happened to have a piece that would be ideal for him. Additionally, it would guarantee that Kaneko would have a longer and more satisfying time with the blonde if the two developed a deeper connection, though that didn't seem to be a big deal because the two quickly became friends despite Esme's interference. However, that might just be because it's Naruto. From what she'd seen and heard from Kaneko, the boy was very amiable and easy to get along with, and when he started talking, there was something more than his attractive features that drew you in. He's an intriguing boy. Knowing what Kaneko had planned for the day, Kiba asked a question that Akino also wanted an answer to. Bucha. How is Kaneko-chan doing, in your opinion? I'm sure Kaneko-chan is fine, Rias said, bursting out of her reverie with a broad smile. With the script we rehearsed over the last 2 days, she has undoubtedly won Naruto-san over. Well, I hope little Kaneko-chan succeeds in getting Naruto-san's attention, she exclaimed with great enthusiasm. Akino and Kiba grinned as they heard Rias' faith in Kaneko. Kiba instantly leapt to his feet as Rias narrowed her eyes as a blue magic circle suddenly materialized in the middle of the room, drawing everyone's attention. Sona, Momo, and Tomo emerged from the circle, and Rias said, "Hello Sona-san. What can I do for you today?" "Rias-san, the floor of room 410 has been destroyed," she said calmly, causing Sona's eyes to narrow. Everyone's attention was instantly captured by that. Rias leaned over her desk and slammed her hands down, saying, "What?" Sona looked around and saw that someone was missing. "Yes," she said, adjusting her glasses. "We don't know what happened, but I wanted to make sure it wasn't someone from your peerage." "Rias-san, where is Kaneko-san?" A pit formed in Rias's stomach at the question, and she fervently hoped that her Kahai was unharmed and that the feeling she was experiencing was just the stomach flu. "Akino-chan, Kiba-kun, we will locate Kaneko-chan," shouted Rias, now ignoring Sona and her companions. "Hi Bucha, where would you like to begin, Bucha?" The two replied. Kiba inquired. "Let's begin with her apartment." Before they left, Sona called out, "Rias-san, I hope Kaneko-san is okay, but when this is over, I want an explanation if she was involved." Rias nodded understandingly before her group was engulfed in a flash of light, leaving Sona and her followers in the orc who quickly left to start their investigation. If she is in a bad mood, She most likely went home if she didn't come here, Rias said. Akano and Kiba nodded and gathered around Rias. The maid and Naruto's caretaker were growing nervous outside the school's gate. Unbeknownst to anyone who saw her, his caregiver is in her late 20s. She has a slender, curvaceous frame that is complemented by her porcelain skin, long raven black hair that reaches her mid-back, which she keeps up and off her neck with a white headband that has 2 red threads that wrap around the bottom of her head to help keep her hair up, appearing like side bangs that fall below her chest while her bangs cover her forehead, soft red eyes, and 2 small gold dangling earrings that fall past her knees. His maid, on the other hand, wears a gray French maid uniform with a white headpiece, apron, cuffs with white frills coming out of the bottom of her skirt, and black loafers. She has an unassuming, lithe, almost slender figure with bisque skin, soft yet rugged features that she conceals behind her large, thick, round glasses. Her pale black hair was tied into 2 low braided pigtails that fell over her shoulders and stopped below her bust, and her bangs covered her forehead. His maid stood with her hands folded in front of her waist, looking composed, while his caretaker paced back and forth. It's been more than 30 minutes since school let out. I hope Naruto-sama is okay, a concerned caregiver said, making animated gestures as she spoke. I'm sure Namikaze-sama is fine, the maid said calmly, but the steel in her eyes indicated that she felt differently. Before long, the maid noticed Esme walking toward them, and the caretaker heard Esme's footsteps and turned to face the blonde. Lafayette-sama, how can we help you? The caretaker asked with a slight bow. The 2 women bowed slightly to Esme before she continued, I hope Naruto-kun is okay. I mean he was just spirited away by a white-haired girl in the middle of our wonderful talk, Esme said, overdramatizing her situation as she spoke. Hello Yor-san, she said, addressing the caretaker. Roberta-san, she continued, addressing the maid. Yor's eyes appeared to grow cold at those words, and Roberta's eyes narrowed behind her glasses. I see. With a courteous bow, the 2 said, thank you for telling us Lafayette-sama. Oh, please do see him safely returned. With an exaggerated gesture, Esme said, I do worry about my fiancé copyright's well-being, before turning to leave. Yor-san, said Roberta, yes, I will call Lloyd-san immediately. Yor and Roberta, meanwhile, were motionless as statues. A few moments later, the 2 turned and headed home. He might be able to learn about a pupil who fits the description Lafayette-san provided us with. Roberta proposed, we should also ask Kurama-san and Matabi-san to track Namikaze-sama from here, and Yor agreed. After laying out their strategy, the 2 went home to get their friends while Yor called Lloyd. After Yor ended her call to Lloyd, there were a few moments of silence between the 2. Roberta said, she is using us to retrieve Namikaze-sama, and Yor knew exactly who Roberta was referring to. Yes, but we must rescue him for Kushina-sama, said Yor, nodding in agreement. She also seemed to make her move today. We need to tell Kushina-sama that Lafayette-sama is acting quicker than expected, said Yor. When Kaneko realized what she had done, her normally stoic face turned red with embarrassment. Despite her internal panic, Kaneko decided to do what came naturally to her and flew herself and Naruto to her apartment. Kaneko-chan, wouldn't it be better if you opened the door? Naruto said as Kaneko prepared to kick in her own door after landing. Kaneko stopped as she was about to kick her foot out. Thinking about it for a moment, it would be better for her in the long run if she opened her door rather than kicking it in. A moment of silence passed between the 2 after Kaneko lowered her foot. Kaneko-chan, are you going to put me down? Immediately Kaneko shook her head vigorously. Another moment of silence passed before Naruto spoke up again. I can get the door for you if you want. For a moment Kaneko said nothing. After what felt like half an hour Kaneko spoke. Okay. Kaneko-chan, where are your keys so I can unlock the door? Naruto asked, scratching his cheek after discovering that the door was locked. Kenko's cheeks were still red from her earlier embarrassment, so it was difficult to tell if her shade of red deepened. Corset. Left pocket, she said flatly. What followed caused Kaneko's heartbeat to become so rapid that it couldn't be detected by an EKG machine. As he searched, Naruto leaned forward to put his face closer to her cheek, and as he did so, a vision of Naruto kissing her cheek flashed through Kaneko's head. Upon retrieving her keys, Naruto unlocked the door and opened it. Kaneko immediately sprang forward, removed her shoes, and placed Naruto on her couch, where she removed his shoes and set them at her door. She then proceeded to the other end of her couch, bringing her knees up and clutching a pillow to her chest. Kaniko's apartment was a two-bedroom home that was rather cutesy, not what one would expect from the normally stoic girl, with a three-seater sofa with cat face throw pillows across from a moderately sized flat-screen TV that was mounted on the wall and connected to the two best gaming consoles available. Her living room was moderately furnished, with a low, glass coffee table and white carpet that matched her hair. She also seemed to have a few bookshelves that contained a variety of games, many of which were fighting games, as well as a few trinkets, some of which were cats, while others seemed to be souvenirs Naruto didn't recognize. The living room was connected to a kitchen that could accommodate two average-sized men a little tightly, and the curtains were a serene sky blue that gave the room a comfortable atmosphere. Adorable cats, likely from some sort of wallpaper, were spread across the walls, and there were small ornaments shaped like sweets that brought the room home. There were also multiple pictures of a younger Kaneko alongside younger Rias and Akeno, and although Kaneko wasn't smiling in all of them, her eyes did convey a certain amount of joy and happiness. Kaneko remained motionless on the couch while Naruto sat on the other end, taking in his surroundings, though he was a little taken aback by everything Kaneko had just done. In an attempt to break the awkward silence, Naruto asked for something to drink, and Kaneko, not wanting to be a bad host, got up from her seat in a robotic manner before going to the kitchen and coming back with a bottle of water. As Kaneko was about to return to her side of the couch, Naruto grabbed her wrist, startling the white-haired girl. Looking back, she saw Naruto grinning at her before motioning for her to sit beside him. Kaneko reluctantly complied with his silent request, but this time she sat with her hands on her knees and was as rigid as a board. Naruto was the first to interrupt the silence with a question, asking, "So, Kaneko-chan, are you a devil?" "How does he know?" Kaneko asked in alarm, and then it hit her. "I showed him my wings." She was unsure of how her crush knew about the supernatural world, but she began to fidget nervously with her skirt, unsure of how to respond. Would he hate her for being a devil? After all, devils have a lot of negative stigma surrounding them from myths and legends. Kaneko felt a hand grab her own before her thoughts could get any darker. She looked up to see Naruto smiling kindly at her, saying, "It's okay, Kaneko-chan. You are still my friend even though you are a devil. I know you are a good person, which is why we are friends," he said, rubbing her head with his free hand. After all, it's the person who is good or bad, not their race. Kaneko threw herself into Naruto and embraced him tightly, causing his bones to creak from the force, but Naruto ignored it and kept smiling while rubbing Kaneko's head. The two were abruptly interrupted from their tender moment when a red magic circle appeared in the entrance. Rias, Akeno, and Kiba emerged from the circle, and Rias became anxious at the sight of Ida, not just because Kaneko was staring at her with eyes that could freeze the sun. They simply teleported in front of a human. "Oh, you three are also devils, Naruto asked nonchalantly. "Ah, sorry about that, I figured it was okay to talk about since you just teleported here to Kaneko-chan's home," Naruto said shyly as Rias, Akeno, and Kiba turned to face him and asked if Kaneko had told him anything. Kaneko simply shook her head, leaving the others perplexed as to how he knew they were devils. Naruto had a sudden epiphany. "Wait, you are a devil and your last name is Grimori. Are you related to the Grimori family?" Naruto inquired. "Namikaze-san, how do you know about devils?" The three elder devils in the room squinted at the question, questioned Rias. Naruto perked up a bit at the question. "Oh, that," Naruto casually remarked, "it's because I recognized Kaneko-chan's wings when she carried me here." At that moment, everyone's eyes were fixed on Kaneko, who buried her face in Naruto's stomach and gave him a light leg punch, making him wince. "Yes, Namikaze-san, I am," Rias said, inhaling deeply. "I am Rias Grimori, the heiress of the Grimori family, as you are aware. And this is Kiba Yuto and Akeno Himahima, as you are undoubtedly aware. Now, Namikaze-san, I would really like to know what transpired after you left class today." "Oh, please just call me Naruto." Rias nodded in agreement, saying, "As long as you don't mind doing the same for us. I'm not big on formalities, especially if the occasion doesn't call for it." As he spoke, Naruto nodded in return and said, "Well, you might want to take a seat as there is quite a bit of history that needs to be told first before we tell you what happened after class." Realizing that this was her only choice, Rias nodded and sat down on the couch, followed by Akeno after Kaneko was moved to Naruto's lap, causing the white-haired girl to blush despite her stoic expression and for Kiba to take a chair from the kitchen and sit at the coffee table. "To begin with, I come from one of the colleges of magic's most powerful mage houses. Actually, My father is from one of the strongest Western houses, and my mother is from the strongest Eastern house. But as you have undoubtedly noticed, my last name is my father's. Well, that explains how you recognized Kaneko-chan's wings as being those of a devil, Rias interrupted before he could say anything more. Naruto nodded in agreement, and Akino then said, "Pardon me, Bucha, but what significance do his family ties have?" Rias turned to face Naruto, who seemed eager to clarify. You witness Akino-chan during the Great War between angels, fallen angels, and devils. Following the demise of the earlier Satans, the three sides were continuously attempting to sign a ceasefire. However, it was extremely difficult to make any progress because of the high levels of tension that existed between many of the factions. Until Azazel discovered my mother's clan, that is. He asked them to attend the next meeting between the three factions as soon as he found out about our chains. He held out his hand and produced a very small soft white chain with a spear tip point while the links were adorned with spikes. When things got out of control, they restrained everyone and served as mediators and security between the three groups, which is how the three groups were able to come to an agreement. Even though they were aware of the ceasefire that was signed, 3 of the 5 residents were shocked to silence. They now understood how the three factions managed to come to an agreement despite their animosity, since not everyone is in favor of peace. Before long, Akino was smiling sweetly, and Rias recognized it right away. Pardon me, Naruto-san, but how did your family's chains stop such strong people from fighting? When she saw the chains, she asked softly while licking her lips. Unable to read her expression, Naruto grinned and started to explain, you see, our chain stops them from using their magic on anyone they touch. Additionally, they have the power to drain the magic of a being into the person wearing the chains. Additionally, they are able to neutralize any magical attack that comes their way. Additionally, it was through them that the Uzumaki family received both angelic and demonic blessings. Your family was blessed by 2 of the 3 biblical factions, Rias said, capturing everyone's attention. Exclaimed Rias. Naruto nodded with enthusiasm. They used a combination of phoenix tears and seraph feathers to grant my family lifespans comparable to those of pureblood angels and devils. The older blonde in the room responded, it also gave us a strong healing factor as well as the devil reproduction rate by accident. He then tapped his chin thoughtfully and started to rub Kaneko's head once more, adding, though we found out that the traits only appears in humans who have our chains. Akino asked a question that the other devils in the room should have anticipated. So, Naruto-kun, do you ever use your chains to tie up any naughty witches? Sultrily, she asked. As he turned his head away from Akino's captivating eyes, Naruto flushed a little nervously. Oh, my Ka-chan did teach me how to use them to restrain people, he said, letting the chain slide back into his hand. Did she show them how to securely tie them up? Akino sauntered over to Naruto and leaned into his face, her lips getting closer and closer to his. If it weren't for the sound of a cat hissing in front of her, she would have continued, but Naruto remained silent as his face heated even more. As she seemed to be hissing like a cat defending its territory, she looked down and saw Kaneko's blatantly murderous gaze. Era Kaneko-chan. Don't worry, I was just asking Naruto-kun some important questions, Akino said, holding her face in her open palm and grinning endearingly. With a harsh tone, Akino-chan said to Rias, please take a seat again so Naruto-san can explain how he got to be in Kaneko-chan's apartment. Akino made a simple bow and said, hi Bucha. After Akino sat down, Naruto sighed deeply before Kaneko gave him an elbow. Rubbing the spot where Kaneko hit him, Naruto peered curiously at the white-haired girl, who had puffed cheeks and refused to meet his gaze. Unaware of what had angered Kaneko, Naruto chose to carry on with his story. Well, eventually my Ka-chan fell in love with my Otou-san and they got married. However, things between them changed after I was born. I'm the second son of the family, so my Otou-san saw my life as forfeit, and as a resource rather than something to be cherished. Something my Ka-chan was vehemently against. Because of his view, my Otou-san signed a marriage contract with a lesser house who can create powerful artificial life and servants using magic with the most powerful of their creations involving the dead, he bizarrely told them. Rias was horrified by the statement. While his father was marrying him off to a family that murders people to make servants, her parents were marrying her off to a womanizing pig of a devil. Additionally, if he is present, Kaneko must have intervened in a situation. In an attempt to find a bright side, Kiba said, but surely that doesn't make your life forfeit. Sure, you are being married off, but at least you will be alive. In denial, Naruto shook his head. No, the contract signed has no stipulations on my health, just that we will be wed. Meaning that if Lafayette-san desired, she could turn me into a homunculus and she would not be violating the contract. Because of that, she desires to turn me into a mindless husk who will follow every order she gives. My body will be moving but my heart and mind will be gone. Kiba and the others were now disgusted. Naruto's father only saw him as a way to gain power, as something he had experienced himself. Well, surely you can fight back against the arrangement. ! Ryus asked. Tragically, Naruto shook his head. No. My Otou-san sealed my magic and has my maid and caretaker reseal it every month, even though they are against it and actually work for my Ka-chan. They were assigned to me by my Ka-chan since she couldn't be near me anymore, so she wanted some people she could trust to look after me. I guess it's supposed to be some sort of way of showing that Ka-chan is powerless to save me, which is probably why he allows them to be so close to me, said the blonde human. In fact, since we are nearing the end of the month, the seal is getting weaker and I can actually use a small amount of my magic again, Naruto said with a smile. Ryus and Akeno thought, well, that explains why he was starting to show signs of magical power like Esme. If not for my Ka-chan, your-san, Yuri-san, Lloyd-san, Roberta-san and Tsunade-san, then I would have never learned how to control my magic, learn all the wonderful things I know, or even have a real life, as my Otou-san wanted me to learn how to be a servant at 6 when the signs of my magic started to appear. In fact, Ka-chan even made adjustments to holographic projection magic just so she could train me in how to use my magic. A curious Kiba asked, why did he want you to learn how to be a servant? I was told by my Ka-san that because of the Lafayette's magic I would follow the Lafayette's orders in any way my body already knew, so it was why he was so insistent on me being trained. However, despite the seal on my person, my Ka-chan still taught me how to use magic. It was at this point that Naruto began to cry. Eventually Tsu-san found out. He agreed to let me continue my training as it may make me more of a prize, but he added a tertiary function to the seal that prevented my Ka-san from being within 100 yards of me. Akeno felt down now. She and Ryus had no idea what it would be like to be separated from the only family member who stood by you in the face of such a bastard. At that moment, Kaneko spun around in his lap and embraced Naruto tightly, which he returned. Even though tears were still streaming down his cheeks, Naruto cheerfully remarked, though it wasn't all bad, your-san and Roberta-san always made sure to point out my Ka-san when we went out to show me that she was always watching over me and still wanted to be in my life. He said something that left Ryus and Akeno perplexed. Excuse me Naruto-san, but how could she train you in magic if it was sealed? Well, my family doctor on my Ka-chan's side, Tsunade-san, described it as working a muscle. This one I just worked very hard and more often. So even though my magic was sealed, if I kept trying at it, then eventually, I would cast the spell as I was working with less mana. It also resulted in my magical reserve skyrocketing as I was working a muscle with a lot of weight, as she put it. Akeno asked in shock, so you're saying you are far stronger than the power you are radiating right now? Ryus was very intrigued by the question and was now even more determined to win him over to her likely rating game. Naruto enthusiastically nodded. After giving it some thought, he answered, Naruto-san, how strong are you? I don't know. We didn't have anyone to measure it to, as your-san and Roberta-san don't use magic, and my Ka-san was never with us in person when my power was unsealed to measure it. When it came to possible peerage members, Ryus thought she had struck gold. Perhaps this solution would release Naruto from his marriage contract, as she was also deeply repulsed by his father's behavior. Although the group couldn't see it, Kaneko's eyes were starting to well up with tears. She just realized that she prevented someone she believed to be a love rival from killing Naruto. Rather, she was merely his executioner. Wait, couldn't they just unseal your magic permanently? If you're not around your Otou-san, then shouldn't that be acceptable since he won't know about it? Asked Akeno. We tied once. Sadly, I cast a large spell in the past that linked the Uzumaki family vault to a special summoning magic I crafted while also sealing it in a pocket dimension with several locks in place to ensure that only one with Uzumaki blood in their veins, magic flowing through them, and having the key I crafted could access it. Really, the two former requirements are actually necessary for me to pass the key to another, Naruto grumbled sheepishly. Well, the spell let loose a lot of magical power which got his attention. Now he will do random inspections until my marriage to ensure the seal is active, stated Naruto. Akeno yelled, wait, If you have such a strong affinity for magic, why would he still allow you to be a mindless being? Naruto developed a groggy expression. He doesn't know what I did, and I refused to tell him. If I can keep my skills after I die, then I want the vault out of everyone's grasp, that way they don't try anything with artifacts and treasures that aren't theirs. What was the secondary function of the seal? Replied Kiba. Naruto was the only one who did not look at him. The atmosphere around Naruto darkened. You mentioned a tertiary function, so that would mean there is a secondary function. What is it? Naruto's voice sounded hollow as he spoke. Everyone was taken aback by the response, that I can't fight back against Esme-san. Rias continued to scream, so you're just giving up. Just because you don't like your situation doesn't mean you should give up. Naruto gave a somber look and shook his head. No, as in I cannot fight her in any way. If she wants to hurt me, I can't raise a hand against her in retaliation. So even if I wanted to fight back, the seal prevents me. Naruto's eyes began to well with tears. It's just so frustrating. If I could fight her, then I'd see to it that she would leave me alone and show my worth. It's part of the reason why I train so hard and study so much. I thought that if I showed I was as good as my brother, then maybe Otou-san would see me as something more than disposable. How? Inquired the girl with the white hair. Kaneko looked up with reddening eyes and asked, how could your Otou-san agree to that? As he spoke, Naruto did his best to meet everyone's gaze, the sadness in his features becoming more noticeable. Like I said, Kaneko-chan. My Otou-san. Kaneko interrupted him. No, that man can't be called your Otou-san if he doesn't even have the decency to treat you like his child. Then you shouldn't call him Otou-san. Akeno said, she's right, Naruto-kun. With amazing venom, she said, don't respect that man because he isn't an Otou-san to you. Naruto nodded and went on. Namikaze sees me as commodity to be traded away, so he agreed to the marriage, for the good of the magical community. Rias found that line to be far too personal. However, Rias took action after spotting an opening. Naruto turned to face Rias and said, Naruto-san. Intrigued, Naruto gestured for Rias to go on. I might have a way to get you out of your marriage contract. The others were aware of what she was offering, and they hoped it would save Naruto in the same way that it had saved them. I'm not sure if you know about the history of devils since the Great War, but to replenish our numbers after the civil war that followed the signing of the ceasefire, devils needed to replenish our numbers. To do this, Ajuka Beelzebub-sama created something called evil pieces modeled after the pieces on a chessboard. Here, Rias called forth a red rook piece that appeared to be glowing with strength. These pieces are given to high-class devils to increase their rankings amongst other devils. We do this by using these pieces to reincarnate anyone to become devils and become part of what is known as a peerage. The members of a peerage would then serve the king piece as servants. However, in my family we see our peerage as family, not as servants, so I would not expect you to act any differently if you agree to a part of my peerage. Right now, Akeno-chan is my queen, Kiba-kun is my knight, while Kaneko-chan is my rook. Naruto smiles melancholy as he looks down. Saddened and perplexed, Rias said, I'm sorry, Rias-san, but I don't think that would work. He then asked why he thought that. As I told you, I have the blood of two prestigious magical houses, the Uzumaki and Namikaze. The Uzumaki have favor with the devils and angels. If I were to be reincarnated, it may be seen as the family picking sides by having someone with the blood of an Uzumaki becoming a devil. Plus, I know that the colleges of magic would see it as an affront as such a powerful bloodline was being taken in without anyone from the colleges' consent. The mood of everyone was severely dampened by that. He couldn't be reincarnated by Rias without igniting a full-scale conflict, which nobody wanted. But at last, Rias realized something. Although it might not be the exact manifestation of the freedom she was seeking, it might buy her some time to delay getting married until she was free. Rias asked, grabbing everyone's attention, what if you had a different marriage partner? Naruto nodded his way up. As you know, I am from one of the families of the remaining 72 pillars. I myself am also in an arranged marriage that I am struggling to break as well, because the man I am promised to is a pig of a devil who is more interested in studying his libido than caring about me or anyone else. In fact, he has made it clear on several occasions that he is more than willing to take Akeno-chan and Kankeo-chan just because he feels it is within his right to do so. As they recalled their encounters with the devil, the other members of her peerage also made disgusted faces. But Kaneko began to become concerned. I'm sorry that you two have to be engaged to someone that sounds so deplorable, Rias-san. You seem like a nice person, but are you sure you want to be engaged to me? I mean, I appreciate the offer and all, but I don't want to trap you in a loveless marriage. Like Akeno had done before, Rias leaned into Naruto and even used the same seductive tone. Oh, I wouldn't be too worried about that, Naruto-kun. Besides, you are a far better choice than my current fiancé copyright. Your attitude alone is far better than his, and if I must say, you are easier on the eyes. Plus, with the prestige your blood carries, I'm sure that no one in the underworld would be willing to make a fuss over things. And if we find out we don't really connect, I'm sure we can come to an understanding and break off the engagement cleanly. Naruto, who was quite agitated by Rias' recent behavior, agreed to Rias' plan after he quickly withdrew and resumed speaking normally. Most people in the room were unaware of Kaniko's sudden and deep decline in mood. Akeno saw right away that she was leaving Naruto's lap and heading for her room. Akeno trailed behind Kaniko to check on her, keeping an eye on her Kahai's mood. Kaniko felt depressed. No, she was upset. Knowing that she liked Naruto, Rias was determined to have him all to herself in order to escape her forced marriage. Rias knew Kaniko liked Naruto, but she wasn't even sure if she did. With tears streaming down her cheeks, Kaniko slipped out of sight and muttered, "It's not fair." Before long, she felt two thin arms encircle her, drawing her into a hug against two plump piles of skin. Before long, she could identify the voice behind her. Now Kaniko-chan, there is no need to cry. I know that Bucha's proposal is hurting you, however, here Akeno's tone changed from comforting to playful, you will still have an opportunity to confess to him. After all, we are devils, I'm sure Bucha wouldn't mind sharing with you. Akeno's words caused Kaniko's eyes to widen. She could still be with Naruto if that were the case. Resolved, Kaniko turned around and gave Akeno a hug in return, thanked her, and left for the living room. Every day they traveled to Kuo, Kaniko was reminded that she had a steep hill to climb if she wanted to compete with Rias in terms of physical attractiveness. But she knew Naruto better as a person because of their time together, and that could be what helps her succeed. Although she wasn't around Naruto frequently to confirm it, Kaniko thought, besides, he might not even like girls developed like Bucha. She had never seen Naruto gaze at Rias, Akeno, or Esme's enormous breasts. With her newfound self-assurance, Kaniko took her old seat while Rias and Naruto were organizing their timetable to figure out how to leave their current arrangements and establish a new one. Naruto quickly came to a realization as Kaniko sat on his lap. It caught everyone off guard when Naruto developed a horrified expression. "Oh no, I neglected to inform your San and Robert-san that I was all right," a terrified Naruto thought. Rias said, "Naruto-kun, are you okay?" The loving suffix added to Naruto's name made Kaniko twitch, as did the fact that Naruto did the same for Rias. He laughed uneasily and remarked, "Ah, just remembering something important, Rias-chan, ah ha ha ha." Naruto's heart stopped cold when there was a knock on the front door. Rias and her peerage were on guard, not anticipating anyone else would arrive. Along with Rias, Akeno, and Kaniko, Naruto stood up from his seat and watched as Kiba made a sword out of nothing. Naruto's heart began to beat again as Kiba got close to the front door. He tried to warn him, saying, "Wait. Don't open the door." Kiba took Naruto's words as a warning and leapt back just in time to see the door collapse inward, shocking the devils in the room. With straps connecting the front and back of the dress to her three-tiered black choker featuring a golden rose over a red spiral medallion hanging from it, the stunning woman entered wearing a form-fitting, halter-style black dress that accentuated her shoulders and upper chest. In order to prevent her straps from moving when she moved, there was also a strap that encircled her upper chest. The back of the skirt, which had a pronounced rose pattern, dropped to just below her knees, while the front ended at her mid-thigh. In addition, she had on black fingerless gloves that ended at the end of her palm and a pair of rose-patterned, thigh-high, high-heeled boots. Her raven black hair was tied up with a gold headband, and each side of her head had a large golden rose with two long spikes pointing slightly downward. She wore blood-red lipstick, a pair of gold earrings in the shape of a small spike, and two gold foot-long double-edged daggers with a ring on the handle. Her side bangs reached below her bust, and her bangs covered her forehead. Behind her was a plain-looking woman dressed in a gray French-made uniform with white frills peeking out from the bottom of the skirt, a white headpiece, an apron, and cuffs. She also wore black loafers and white stockings. Her glasses are big, round, and dense. Her bangs covered her forehead, and her pale black hair was styled into two low braided pigtails that fell over her shoulders and ended below her bust. She had a pink umbrella in her hands. A two-tailed cat that seemed to be made of blue fire and had heterochromatic eyes, the left being yellow and the right green, as well as an orange fox with 9 tails, black markings that encircled its eyes and extended into its rabbit-like ears, and the upper body structure of a human, including opposable thumbs on its claw, entered the apartment without anyone noticing. Although the devils were taken aback by the newcomer, they were alerted by the aura that the two women were giving off. The woman with the raven hair spoke first. "Excuse me, but could you kindly return Naruto-sama to us?" Kiba lifted his sword, ready to strike, their recent actions having made him ready for action. But the two women in front of him took the initiative. With her daggers in a forward grip, the woman in the black dress charged Kiba. Kiba was caught off guard by her speed and swung his sword downward, but it was parried before he could see the woman spin on her toes and then lash out with a straight kick to his stomach. As the devils watched Kiba bend around her leg and then be hurled toward Kaniko's kitchen, his momentum slamming him into her counter, they were astounded by the force of the blow. Rias and Akino were so taken aback that they failed to notice the maid approaching from behind. "Bucha, Akino-san, look out," yelled Kaniko, who spun around and jumped to defend Rias and Akino. She was forced to the ground by 2 quick blurs of orange and blue, but it was in vain. Akino then had the umbrella handle slam into her head, causing her to collapse where she was standing. When Rias swiftly turned to face Akino's assailant, the maid kicked her feet out from under her and thrust the umbrella handlia, which felt bigger than a typical umbrella handlia, into her stomach. After putting her foot on Akino's back, the maid pointed the umbrella's head at Rias, who noticed that the spike at the end was hollow. When the scene calmed down and everyone's attention was on Naruto, the blonde moved swiftly. Before anything else could happen, Naruto was finally heard as a number of tiny, spiked chains passed by everyone's view while he yelled, "Stop! Your-san, Roberta-san, Kurama, Matabi, stop, they are my friends, and they are going to help me get out of my obligation with Esme-san." Everything was quiet except for Kiba's considerable pain and Kaniko's grunting as he attempted to push off the ground without success. As she starts to panic, Yor is the first to speak. I'm so sorry, I had no idea you were friends of Naruto-sama. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry," she exclaimed, repeatedly bowing to everyone while Naruto removed his chains. Roberta took her foot away from a beaming Akino and slowly drew back her umbrella. Then she bowed courteously. "I see, I am sorry for attacking Namikaze-sama's friends and allies. However, please refrain from taking him out without informing us in the future," she replied quietly. Kaniko was able to leap to her feet and see what had pinned her as the 2 weights on her back appeared to vanish. Rias stood up as well and gave the 2 women a suspicious look before noticing what Kaniko was focusing on. 2 small creatures the size of adult house cats sat at Naruto's feet, an orange 9-tailed fox with ears like rabbits and clawed hands like humans, and a blue 2-tailed cat that seemed to be on fire. Before long, Kiba was dragged from Kaniko's counter by Yor, much to the devil's surprise, and Akino stood up, her smile fading as she did so. Kiba rubbed his stomach in agony, and Yor then apologized multiple times. Meanwhile, Roberta entered Kaniko's kitchen and started gathering supplies to prepare tea for everyone. Rias mentioned Naruto-kun to catch the blonde's attention. She pointed to the 2 women and the 2 animals at his feet and asked, "Who are they?" Sheepishly, Naruto scratched the back of his head. Before he could respond, a blue magic circle materialized in the foyer, causing the 2 women to re-brandish their weapons and the 2 creatures to appear poised to leap. Sona soon emerged from the circle, followed by the entire student council and another person. Rias stepped in before Naruto's maid, caretaker, or familiars could attack. Even though Naruto's party didn't divert their attention from the newcomers, Rias's cry, "Wait! Stop!" got everyone's attention. "They are friends! They are friends!" she exclaimed in a terrified voice. Sona and her group appeared anxious. 4 unknowns appeared prepared to attack them, putting them at a disadvantage. "Namikaze-sama. Roberta started, is this true?" He didn't want to see anyone killed, even though he wasn't close to any of the student council members or the person they brought with them. In response, Naruto said, "Yes, they are also my friends." Naruto's group then loosened their positions. There was a collective sigh, and Sona looked at Rias. Rias sighed again and said, "Rias-san, can you explain what is going on?" Sona and her group turned to Naruto after she said, "I think Naruto-kun is the best one to explain what's going on." "What are those?" Sona inquired, noticing the 2 animals at his feet. Rias remarked, "That's what I want to know too." Abruptly, something occurred that captured everyone's interest. From near Naruto, a deep voice could be heard. The voice sulked and said, "You know you can ask us instead just asking the kid." Before long, a quieter voice could be heard. The group of devils watched as the fox crossed its arms and snorted, saying, Now Kurama-kun, they didn't know that we can talk, so don't be too hard on them. We hardly look like normal animals, Matabi-chan." Rias spoke up before more could be said. Kurama rolled his eyes. "You can talk," he exclaimed. At that point, Rias appeared somewhat sheepish, and the student council was in shock, despite the fact that their +1 appeared unperturbed. "Of course we can. We're the kit's familiars after all." Sona rubbed her temples and said, "Okay, can someone please explain to me what is going on?" Kaneko caught everyone's attention by coughing before they could say anything. "My door," was her flat statement, pointing to the demolished item. Roberta appeared uninterested, while Yor appeared shy. Rias exhaled deeply. "Sorry Kaneko-chan, but we can't get it fixed until tomorrow." Kaneko gave everyone a sardonic look that conveyed her desire to have it fixed and her distaste for any justification. "Naruto-sama," Yor said, grabbing everyone's interest. Now that everyone was looking at Naruto, he nodded and grinned broadly. "If Roberta-san and I loosen your seal, can you fix the door?" While the others were merely perplexed, the devils who knew Naruto was a member of the colleges of magic were interested in how he would repair the door. "Then please come here, Namikaze-sama." Roberta motioned for Yor and Naruto to approach her. Before long, they witnessed Naruto removing his shirts, and the girls' attention was drawn solely to his physique. His form elicited a range of responses. Kaneko and Rias blushed, Akano licked her lips, Sona looked away as her cheeks flushed, and Tsubaki gave Naruto a thoughtful glance before turning to face Kiba, who was lying on the couch. Naruto soon had a big seal on his upper back. Yor did the same after Roberta took off one of her gloves and took a knife out of her apron, where she nicked her index finger. They positioned their bloody fingers at opposite ends of the seal and rotated them counterclockwise. The marks would appear to be open if the seal were visible, giving the impression that it was being disassembled. Everyone could sense the slight energy coming from Naruto getting stronger as the seal relaxed. As Naruto raised his right hand, Yor and Roberta continued to hold on to his seal. The peerages of Rias and Sona were amazed by what transpired next. On Naruto's arm, red particles formed a gauntlet of segmented gold plate armor with a black glove underneath, the tips of the fingers resembling claws. The glove's palm and finger joints were both visible. Naruto raised the gloved palm of his hand. A big book-like tablet that was partially open, just like the gauntlet, materialized in his hand. The devils could see a line of gold shine on Naruto's face as he waved his left hand over the tablet. And then something unexpected occurred. The components of Kaneko's door began to fly back toward the doorway and were put back together, appearing as if nothing had happened. The holes that Naruto made in the walls with his chains vanished as well. When Naruto was finished, he unsummed his tablet and gauntlet with his left hand while he waited for the seal to be tightened again. But that didn't occur. In fact, Yor and Roberta took their hands off Kaneko's back while they were mending his door. "Apologies, Namikaze-sama, but we feel that it is best if part of your powers remain unsealed to better protect yourself given there is a supernatural presence at your school," Yor said with a kind smile as he turned back to question them. Many in the room noticed that she used Naruto's last name with little regard while using his first name with a great deal. As more of his magic flowed through him, Naruto started to cry. Usually, he was only able to experience his magic near the end of each month. Until it was sealed away once more, it gave him the impression that he was becoming whole. It was more than he had felt in a long time, even though it was far from his full potential. He embraced Roberta and Yor and expressed his gratitude to them. Chu just gave him a hug in return, grinning slightly. Rias was stunned. She sensed that Naruto was radiating power that was almost equal to her own, and what she was experiencing was only a portion of that power. "How powerful are you, Naruto-kun?" Rias asked. Sona then attracted everyone's attention by clearing her throat. Despite Roberta's lethal glare at Sona, Naruto nodded and said, "While I hate to interrupt this moment, however, as co-overseer of Kuo for the Devils, I must ask what is going on in Sitri and Grimori territory." Sona looked at everyone in the room and nodded in agreement, saying, "Okay, but I think we should do this with more room." Rias then suggested that since the ORC was spacious enough and she had an extra couch there for the event, they could hold it there. Since neither peerage was able to teleport the humans, the only question that remained was how they were going to get there. Naruto quickly resolved that by calling forth Yor, Roberta, Kurama, Matabi, and his own teleportation circle beneath him. In place of the Grimoire's rose, it had a spiral inside a circle in the middle, and it was as red as Rias. The devils couldn't say anything. Even though they can teleport easily, they were ignorant of human magic because many of the people they had encountered were unable to use it. Many had actually never dealt with a member of the colleges of magic before. Before his party disappeared in a red flash of light, Naruto gave the blonde one of the biggest smiles they had ever seen. "Well, see you there," he said, giving a two-fingered salute. Kiba and Yor brought in the extra couch so that everyone could sit down after everyone had entered the ORC. Sona started her introduction after everyone had taken a seat. Sona met Naruto's gaze and said, "Before we continue, I would like to introduce myself and my peerage as I did not do so earlier, if that is all right with you." Naruto said, "Of course Sona-chan." Sona looked flat at the blonde. "Namikaze-san, please refrain from being so affectionate with me while we are such formal settings." While Yor was frantically trying to comfort him, Naruto hung his head in a humorous manner. "That's so mean, Sona-san, I thought we were friends." Naruto pouted in jest. Sona simply adjusted her spectacles. "No matter our relationship, formality must be followed in a professional environment," stated Sona. Observing the anguish in his eyes, Sona granted his request. "If you are going to refer to me formally, can you at least use my first name, please?" The steel in the eyes of the women wearing the black dress and maid outfit, Aria's pleading gaze, had nothing to do with it. Sona started introducing her peerage after noticing no more interruptions. "As you know, my name is Sona Shitori, however that is just a cover. As I have mentioned previously, I represent the Citri family. My real name is Sona Citri, heiress of the Citri family and co-overseer of the city of Kuo with Rias-san." Naruto understood and nodded, allowing Sona to go on. Sona then pointed to the devils surrounding her and said, "As I am sure Rias-san has mentioned, we high-class devils have peerages and all of the members of the student council are members of my peerage. These are the members of my peerage, my queen and Fuku Keicho Tsubaki Shinra-san." Tsubaki smiled politely and offered a small bow, which Naruto returned. "One of my bishops and one of the student council secretaries, Momo Hanakai-san." Momo also smiled politely and waved. "One of my knights and another secretary, Tomo Meguri-san." Tomo was about to greet him loudly, but Sona's look prevented her from doing so, so she settled for a cheerful smile and a wave that Naruto returned. "One of my rooks and one of the three treasurers of the student council, Tsubasa Yura-san." Tsubasa waved politely and smiled politely, and Naruto returned the gesture with a small bow. My other bishops and second treasurer, Raya Kusaka-san." Raya appeared to be very courteous as she made a deep bow, and Naruto returned it with a slightly shallower bow of his own. One of my pawns and third treasurer, Ruruko Nomura-san." Ruruko jumped a little in her seat. "And last but not least, my other rook, Lugaro-san, who currently attends college here at Kuo," was Sona's final statement. Naruto grinned just as broadly and gave a thumbs up. Unlike the other members of Sona's peerage, Lu did not display any visible emotion. Rather, he waved briefly before resting his head on the couch. Another third-year student at Kuo Academy is Tsubasa Yura. Although she is very attractive, she is not even close to Sona or Rias. But despite her attractive appearance, she has a tomboyish charm that makes her stand out from the other Kuo Academy students. She has flawless porcelain skin and is marginally taller than Rias. Her blue hair is shoulder length, with a long strand falling across her nose and bangs framing her face. She stood out thanks to her distinctive hair color, which many students find eye-catching. Her eyes have a deeper blue, nearly cobalt-like hue. She has an average bust and a slim build with some curves around her hips. Wearing the Kuo Academy girls' uniform for the fall and winter, she has a cobalt blue wristband on her left arm and her long sleeves rolled up to just above her elbow. She also has on black stockings that reach her thighs. Like many members of the student council, Raya Kusaka is a third-year Kuo Academy student. Her soft-spoken demeanor, which irritates many of the more sophisticated students, is enhanced by her striking beauty. She is of average height, has a trim build, and has attractive assets that many men would find appealing. Her cheeks are slightly tinted, giving the appearance that she is blushing, and her ivory skin is marred. Her bangs cover her forehead, and her soft brown hair is tied in two thick braids that fall to her waist. She uses a light blue headband to keep her braids back. In addition to the fall and winter Kuo Academy girls' uniform, she is sporting knee-high white socks that accentuate her prominent thighs. In contrast to many of her fellow student council members, Ruruko Nomura is a second-year Kuo Academy student. Her pale blue eyes are accentuated by her flawless, smooth ivory skin. Given her diminutive size, she exudes an endearing beauty that befits an eccentric younger sister. Her assets are proportionate to her size and slender figure. Her bangs are parted on the left side of her head and kept out of her eyes by a green clip on either side of her forehead. Her long, pale brown hair reaches her waist and is tied into twin ponytails. She is also dressed in the Kuo Academy fall and winter uniform, but instead of the customary black stockings, she is wearing thigh-high striped green ones. Unlike everyone else in the room, Lu Garo is a second-year student at the newly built college on Kuo's property. Lu is still a heartthrob despite not being as attractive as Kiba because many girls on campus were drawn to him because of his quiet and distant demeanor. In addition to his tall stature, which complemented his massive, muscular body, he has flawless, pale alabaster skin. Lu's muscles were bigger than the star of Kuo's, but they lacked Naruto's muscular definition, allowing the second-year student to flex and rip the sleeves off his shirt. His bangs conceal his menacing yellow eyes, and the sides of his head conceal his pointed ears. He has long silver hair that is almost shoulder length. A red headband with 3 squares arranged in a diamond pattern over his left ear was wrapped around his forehead. He is dressed in the boys' fall and winter uniform, but he is wearing a thick black jacket with a white fur collar in place of the blazer. Sona gazed straight into Naruto's eyes and said, "Now that introductions are out of the way, to get everyone on the same page." Naruto nodded and repeated what had happened in Kaniko's apartment. Naruto-san, can you please tell me what happened in Kaniko-san's apartment? Yor covered her mouth with her hands as tears streamed from her eyes, while Roberta tilted her head to conceal the tears that were welling up in her eyes. As Yor literally gave Naruto a bone-cracking hug, Roberta got up and bowed to Rias. She quickly released her hold and hurried to Rias at a pace that was difficult for anyone to keep up with, almost smothering Rias in her arms. Yor repeated, "Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you," while Rias' peers tried to force the caretaker away from their king. Roberta assisted in releasing Rias from Yor's embrace. "On behalf of Kushina Uzumaki-sama, I thank you, Grimori-sama. Many of us have been searching for a way to call off this arrangement and you have offered us a means of breaking it and saving Naruto-sama. For this we cannot thank you enough," said Yor with excitement. Rias' cheeks flushed a little from feeling a little shy, but she looked as content as she could be from Yor's praise. Sona appeared unconcerned, but she was actually in a state of shock. Rias consented voluntarily to an arranged marriage. Is she willing to run into another arrangement because she is so desperate to break her own? Not exactly. In this situation, she can dictate the conditions of her agreement, granting herself greater latitude to renege if she so chooses, particularly if she demonstrates her lack of confidence in her parents' choice. The fact that the agreement was not revoked after both candidates were examined may indicate that they lacked the authority to draft a contract, even though neither of them was born at the time of the agreement. In particular, one that was made for the good of the devil race, as they put it. She might even win the devils a College of Magic ally. If this works, they will both demonstrate their intelligence by breaking one agreement and creating another that can be used as an alliance. As Sona adjusted her glasses, an invisible glint appeared in her eyes. And if an Uzumaki is entering an alliance, then no doubt the other two factions will throw their hats into the ring to keep peace, she thought. Sona then looked at the two familiar faces perched on the edge of the couch where Naruto was seated. Kurama and Matabi turned toward Sona, their eyebrows seemingly raised as they felt Sona's eyes on them. She pointed to the two familiar faces and said, "Ahem. Naruto-san, I was wondering if you could tell me what they are." Before turning to see where Sona was looking, Naruto glanced at her. But Kurama was the one who responded to her query. "Tch, I already told you, girl. We are Naruto-san's familiars. I figured that as the heiress to a devil house would not need to be told twice," he said in a huff. Sona's eyebrow twitched. Matabi asked, tilting her head, "Then why didn't you just ask that?" "That's not what I meant. I meant how did you get familiars?" Sona started to lose her temper. Her voice was strained as she said, "Please answer the question." The room fell silent as Naruto responded, "Well, as Kurama-kun said, they are my familiars. As for how I got them, well, I did what any mage does." The silence went on much longer than Sona would have liked, so she said, "Well." Naruto smiled, raised a finger, and winked as though to shush someone. "Sorry, but that's a secret." Sona was very upset by the response, but Kurama laughed loudly at it. Sorry Sona-san, but you can't expect me to answer such questions when you aren't a part of the colleges of magic, do you? Naruto said before she could express her irritation. Sona's reply died in her throat. Just because she was curious, she couldn't publicly ask someone from a different faction to reveal secrets. That did not preclude her from exerting pressure on him, though. When the atmosphere around Yor and Roberta turned hostile, she was forced to stop channeling magic into her eyes. Sona-san, said Naruto, his once happy tone now harsh and icy, I would appreciate it if you cease casting your magic. A big red magic circle covered the room's floor as he spoke. Since this is a meeting between friends, I would like to keep things civil. When Sona realized she had been apprehended, she ceased using her magic, causing the red magic circle to vanish. Rias and Kaneko gave the C3 heiress stern looks, and everyone exhaled in relief. Then Sona made the decision to pose another query. Naruto-san, how did you know I was channeling my magic? I mean, according to your tale, along with confirmation from Kaneko-san, you recognized her as a devil, yet you did not know Rias or the others in this room are devils. While it is true we are hiding our presence, someone as strong as you should have been able to tell we are suppressing our power, so how did you not know earlier? Well, you see, humans can't naturally detect supernatural beings. We need aid from magic or magical items to act as a detection mechanism. And when we use these items or magic, it allows us to also sense when a spell is going to be cast. However, this relies on the magician being skilled enough or the item is powerful enough. Since I wasn't looking for anything supernatural, nor was I strong enough, I wasn't casting any detection magic, explained the blonde magician. Yor spoke up before anything else could be said. Naruto soon appeared to be about to have a panic attack. I'm sorry, Naruto-sama, but it's getting late. It would be best to go back home so you can get a full night's sleep as well as finish any schoolwork you may have so you can have a free weekend. My bag. I left in the class. Esme-san took me to after Kaneko-chan flew me to her apartment. He exclaimed as he leapt to his feet. Naruto's panic was interrupted when Sona called forth his bag from a blue magic circle, saying, Sorry everyone, but I have to. Naruto charged forward as she extended the bag to him, encircling Sona in his strong arms and pressing her face against his flawlessly toned chest. Soon after, Sona's face started to get hot, and she gave him a quick pat on the lower back in return. Kaneko gave the C3 heiress a fierce glare because it seemed like she had more rivals for Naruto, and this one didn't have the justification of saving his life. Naruto gave Sona a heartfelt thank you after letting her go. Ahem, it's nothing, Naruto-san, just doing my duty as student council Keicho, she replied. Because of Roberta's eyes, she continued, and as your friend, Rias-chan, before I forget, let me give you my address and contact information so we can work on breaking our marriage contracts. Do you think you can come by tomorrow so we can get started? Replied Naruto. Rias smiled with closed eyes and gave one nod. She said sweetly, Of course, Naruto-kun. Do you have a time I should show up? Naruto's cheeks were flushed from her cuteness as he said, I think 9 a.m. is fine. When Rias noticed that the most attractive boy in school was impacted by her cuteness, she grinned broadly. Naruto's cheeks flushed even more as she exclaimed, Great. With a small leap that jiggled her assets. We can even work on it here in the orc after classes. She suggested. Rias turned to Yor and Roberta before Naruto could respond, asking them if that is acceptable with you two. Because they were unaware of Naruto's location, she did not want the two to attack her peerage again. It was Roberta who spoke first. If we can join you to ensure Namikaze-sama leaves at a proper time and finishes his schoolwork. Yes, he has a tendency to drive himself to exhaustion when not reined in, Yor continued. Naruto sagged forward and yelled, Yor-san. In a humorous manner. Something tugged at the sleeve of Naruto's jacket. He turned to see what was bothering him and noticed Kaneko, who had puffed cheeks and looked just as adorable to Naruto. I thought we were friends, senpai. I should know your address too. At her reasoning, Naruto grinned and nodded. He enthusiastically exclaimed, You're right, Kaneko-chan. And gave her his address and phone number. With his address in hand, Kaneko stopped puffing out her cheeks and nodded with a faint smile. Just let me know when you want to come by so I can let you in, okay? She asked. Then his right side began to cough. Pardon me, Naruto-san, but I would also like to request your address as well. You see, as someone who has demonstrated higher intellectual capabilities than Rias-san, I would like to aid you too in your research. I am also doing this because Rias-san is my friend and would like to help if I can, said Sona. Rias and Kaneko squinted suspiciously as Naruto and Yor grinned warmly. Tsubaki arched an eyebrow in interest as Akano giggled behind her hand. Excited, Naruto said, "Of course. It's great for friends to look out for each other." As he got ready to deliver his speech to Sona, Rias grabbed it before Sona could accept it, shocking Naruto and causing Sona to narrow her eyes. Rias brushed a lock of hair behind her ear and said arrogantly, "Sorry Sona-san, but I think Naruto-kun and I can handle it on our own." Sona squinted at her friend from childhood. "I don't see why I shouldn't help. I am tied with Naruto-san in academics, so I am obviously a good choice." "That's right Rias-san. The more that help out then the faster we get Naruto-sama out of his arranged marriage," innocently replied Yor. Rias snarled as Sona gave him Naruto's address and phone number, and she appeared arrogant. "Sona, I am aware that you are using an angle here. And I'll locate it," Rias thought. "In that case what about me? Can I also come by Naruto-san?" Akano asked, wanting to join in on the fun. Despite Kaneko's covert glare and Rias and Sona's narrowed eyes, Naruto answered cheerfully. "Yeah, what about you Kiba-san?" he enthusiastically inquired. Kiba said, "Sure, it would be nice to hang out with a guy for a change." He did not see the harm. Tsubaki lifted her glasses slightly and teased Akano, Era Kiba-kun, are you saying you don't like hanging out with us?" Kiba did not respond, but Yor appeared thrilled that Naruto would be hosting friends once more. Soon after, Naruto asked the other members of Sona's peerage, and they all accepted the offer, some of them right away, while others accepted it more casually. "I am happy you have made more friends, Namikaze-sama, however we must return home now so that we may also prepare for your guests," said Roberta. "Oh, you're right Roberta-san." As he called forth a red magic circle beneath himself and his group, Naruto exclaimed, "It's been great meeting you all. I hope you can come by tomorrow so we can hang out." Before they all vanished in a burst of red light, nobody heard Kaneko murmur, "Good night, Naruto-kun," as the light flashed. Sona and her peerage bid Rias and her peerage good night as they also departed via a magic circle after Naruto left. Now that she and her peerage were alone in the orc, Rias sat down behind her desk and sighed. She leaned back in her chair and remarked, "Today was so stressful," glancing at Kaneko, who was seated on one of the couches once more. Kaneko felt Rias' eyes on her, so she turned to face her king and stared at her blankly. Kaneko declared, "I'm not apologizing. The sun was shining and the air was light on Saturday morning." Rias was wearing a striking outfit as she made her way down the sidewalk to her destination. She wore a narrow black skirt that ended just above her knees, gray ankle-high heels, and a red blouse that was off the shoulder and had deep red stripes that revealed some cleavage. The top of the blouse was puffy as if it were extra material. On her shoulder, she held a small black purse with a white frame around the flap. Her lips gleamed from the new coat of lip gloss she had applied. She knew that occasionally observers would visit from the underworld to see how she was doing and make sure she wasn't breaking the conditions of her present marriage contract. If she wanted to support the argument that she and Naruto were a better fit, she had to pretend to like him romantically because she was unable to recognize the observers when they were present. Kaneko was also on her way to Naruto's house. She was wearing a pleated yellow skirt that hung down to her knees and a very casual pink shirt with a plump gray cat eating a cinnamon roll. She also wore white running shoes and black stockings that reached her thighs. She had her phone out for directions and a small circular purse to go with her outfit. When Kaneko and Rias arrived at their destination simultaneously, they noticed Akano and Sona standing at the entrance of a huge silver gate that loomed over them and had the same red spiral in the middle that can be seen in Naruto's magic circles. Akano wore a red blouse and skirt set with a thin black belt around her waist and a purple ribbon on the left side of her chest. She also wore a small rectangular analog watch with a light brown leather band on her left wrist, a small black purse with a pearl white button over her shoulder, a silver chain bracelet on her right wrist, and white high heels with an ankle strap. Sona had on a short-sleeved, plain, pale blue dress that hung below her knees. She wears pearl white flats, a silver rectangular analog watch with a pearl necklace on her right wrist, and a basic hand purse with a gold clasp. Akano was the first to notice them and gave them a warm greeting. Soon after, Sona also greeted the two, saying, "Good morning Bucha." "Good morning Kaneko-chan. I see you are just in time." Rias returned the warm greetings, while Kaneko simply nodded in agreement. As she spoke, Rias tucked a lock of hair behind her ear. Rias pumped her fist, saying, "Of course I am. This has a great impact on my future, so I'm not going to let it slip through my grasp. Although, she said, turning to face Sona, I wonder why you're here. Before she spoke, Sona adjusted her glasses. As I said yesterday, Ryus-san, I am here to help you and Naruto-san research what you need to do to break your arranged marriages, she replied calmly. Ryus narrowed her eyes again, then turned to review the house's appearance. Naruto's home was a two-story mansion with a traditional Japanese aesthetic, including a curved roof, clay shingles, and thick wooden beams that allowed the roof to be divided into 4 sections, despite the Western-style gate that surrounded the property. Akeno took great notice of the aesthetic choice, which included the soft white walls and the double doors at the front of the house with the same red spiral emblazoned on each door as the canopy with a shimenawa strung across it. The front patio was accessible via a polished gray walkway, and other paths appeared to branch off and cross the front yard. 2 sizable planters across the front of the house held a number of striking flowers that added color to the space. Since some of the flowers were rare or thought to be extinct, Akeno and Sona decided to inquire as to how they managed to acquire such exotic flowers. Ryus started drooling a little with pleasure at the sight of a traditional-looking Japanese house as she took in Naruto's house. Foo. It appears Ryus-chan's Japanese obsession is in full swing, laughed Akeno. As Ryus turned to reprimand her friend, she saw Sona, Akeno, and Kaneko enter the large silver gate, leaving the red-headed king behind, and she realized she was being left behind. Ryus yelled for everyone to wait and quickly ran after them. Akeno knocked on the elegant door first, and Roberta answered right away. She bowed slightly and said, Haizahima-san, Chuju-san, it's good to see you again, Citri-sama. Akeno responded, Era, it is our pleasure, Roberta-san, as Kaneko and Sona gave stoic nods. Ryus showed up on the doorstep a minute later, trying not to glare at her friends. Roberta quickly moved aside to let them in, saying, Grimori-sama, it is good of you to join us. Please come in. After entering, the 4 observed the manor. The interior had a more Western aesthetic despite the more conventional exterior. The customary entrance, which permitted visitors and residents to take off their shoes before entering the house altogether, was still in place. A large closet for jackets and accessories that one wouldn't want to bring indoors is located next to a wooden shelf that served as a place for people to store their shoes. The foyer was a plain room that led to a hall with numerous traditional brushstrokes that showed scenes of people interacting with enormous animals or paintings that showed scenes of amazing adventures. You could see the enormous common space farther on, illuminated by the sun's radiance. From their vantage point, they could see pieces of a magic circle, as well as well-maintained weapons and artifacts on full display. Even a few couches and chairs with the appearance of a glass coffee table were present. When Roberta spoke, the devils stopped appreciating the house. The group was drawn in by the statement, please follow me. Young master has just about finished cooking breakfast. If you are interested, there is enough for you to partake. They removed their shoes and trailed the maid. Ryus remarked, I didn't know Naruto-kun could cook, and the other 3 girls noticed the suffix. Roberta seemed to be surrounded by a gloomy, melancholy aura. Yes, well, it was something he developed out of a necessity. They missed the rest of the house entirely and reached the dining room before anyone could question it. They noticed Yor moving around a long, darkly stained wooden table that had a thin tablecloth covering it from end to end. While Yor was setting the table, guests could sit on placemats at each of the ornate chairs. Similar to the living room, the dining room was lighted by the sun because it had multiple windows facing the front of the house and the garden, which created a serene and lovely scene. Although the room is completely brightened by the soft white walls, they were left bare, most likely to keep the occupants focus on one another. Additionally, there was a large chandelier above, which was probably used to illuminate the space when the sun wasn't shining. When Yor saw the devils, she greeted them cheerfully. All of the girls returned the greeting, with Ryus, Akeno, and Sona bowing courteously. Pardon me, but where is Naruto-kun? Akeno asked, surveying his surroundings. Yor cheerfully remarked, Naruto-sama is in the kitchen making breakfast, unintentionally reminding the girls that Naruto was the one preparing breakfast. Akeno put her bag down at a seat near the head of the table and said, would you mind directing me to the kitchen? I would like to assist if I can. Of course, it's just at the other end of the room through the door on your right, said an upbeat Yor. Thank you, Akeno exclaimed with equal joy. Getting the girls' attention, even Akeno slowed her pace to listen. It's so nice for you to help Naruto-sama. It's been a while since another person helped in the kitchen, Yor said. Sona inquired. Someone used to help him in the kitchen. Yor gave a joyful nod. Uzume-chan always helps Naruto-sama out when she visited. It was so cute to see them together, though she preferred to eat his meals than cook them, said Yor. When Akino entered the kitchen after Yor had finished speaking, he saw Naruto working in a mixing bowl while dressed in light brown cargo shorts and a simple, soft blue V-neck shirt that fit his body loosely. He was surprisingly not alone. Kurama and Matabi were also in the kitchen, standing over a pot that appeared to be slowly burning while grabbing what looked to be fruits. It was also a fairly spacious kitchen. Despite having all the conveniences of a contemporary kitchen, some of the appliances were more like those found in restaurants than in homes. Additionally, a few islands were dispersed to provide counter space in the event of a sizable gathering. The room had the same amount of light as the rest of the house, but I thought the walls were smooth tile to make cleaning easier. Naruto heard the door open and turned to see Akino standing there. Naruto swiftly turned his attention back to what he was mixing as the sight of a gorgeous Akino caused his cheeks to flush. "Good morning, Akino-chan." Akino grinned at her influence on Naruto and said, "Good morning, Naruto-kun. Do you need any help? I'm quite the cook myself. Sure, can you start cutting the fruit? Of course, let me wash my hands first." After washing up, Akino discovered a furry appendage next to her, extending a pink apron with frills around the outside. Akino noticed Kurama holding out the garment as he followed the orange tail to its owner. He gave the girl with the raven hair a quick glance and winked, saying, "Trust me, it's quite eye-catching." Akino donned the apron, remembering what he had said. Akino felt superior to the person who had worn it before because it was rather tight around her bust, indicating that the wearer was smaller than she was. She wondered where someone would find an apron like this and whether she could get one for herself because it also seemed to embrace her curves rather overtly. She finished tying the apron and made the decision to enjoy herself. She turned to face Naruto, who was using wind magic as whisks to mix multiple bowls at once while holding his tablet in his gauntleted hand, which displayed a line of golden glowing text. Akino called out, "Naruto-kun." Looking at Akino, Naruto slowed the channeling of his wind magic. When he saw the garment gently straining against her bust, he turned a bright red. "Yes, Akino-chan," Naruto said, clearing his throat. As she clasped her hands together to highlight her bust, which was pushed into the apron and began to protrude from the sides in a very striking way, she asked, "Do you think this apron compliments me in a pleasing way?" As Matabi displayed a scorecard featuring a free paw with 2 thumbs up on it, Kurama was chuckling to himself. The blonde turned his head away from the girl who had taken several steps in Naruto's direction to taunt him, saying, I think we should get back to breakfast." Akino stood up straight after deciding to end the teasing, the tightness of the apron lessening the usual jiggle of her bust. She walked to a free cutting board that was set up next to a variety of knives. A variety of fruits, such as oranges, bananas, and strawberries, were placed next to the cutting board. She also saw a big pitcher, a juicer, and multiple bowls close by. Naruto told Akino what he wanted her to do before she could ask. "Please cut the strawberries to cubes while the bananas into slices and the oranges in half, please. Then place the strawberries and bananas into their own bowls while placing the oranges in juicer. If you could, can you please run the oranges through the pitcher, please?" Akino happily nodded and started chopping the fruits. After she was done, she could see what Naruto and Kurama were going to make because they had lined up the bowls beside the stove. As she brought over the bananas and strawberries, Akino glided in and settled herself next to Naruto. She started cooking, adding the ingredients Naruto was stirring to their pans, some of which she garnished with items from the slightly smaller bowls she brought over. When they set their completed products on a big plate with a gold magic circle underneath, the two moved fluidly around one another. Back in the dining room, Rias and Kaneko wanted to know more about the girl Naruto had previously seemed to be close to. As Rias waited for Naruto, Kaneko beat her to the other seat next to the head of the table and sat down right away. "My, she sounds quite nice. Would you mind telling us more about Uzume-san Yor-san?" Rias asked. Yor's smile was so radiant that it seemed as though the sun was shining behind her. "Oh, of course, I'd be happy to," exclaimed a happy caretaker. "Let's see, oh, she is really kind and sweet, oh, and Uzume-chan has become super cute when I last saw them this past summer. She even brought with her, her friend she had been studying with while away. This beautiful girl with pitch black hair that she ties into 2 high ponytails, but she brings the ends back up and holds them under her polished black hair band. She has a porcelain skin much like yours, Kaneko-san, yours stated with the younger girl's attention. Whenever she and Uzume-chan come over, she lays about and plays games with Naruto-sama, or she plays by herself when he is studying. Or she will often tease Naruto-sama by rubbing against him inappropriately, so we often had to scold her for such brash behavior, said Roberta. Uzume-chan has grown up so well and become so strong. Though Uzume-chan's teasing nature hasn't changed much since she and Naruto-sama were kids. Combined with her new friend's rather forwardness towards the young master, poor Naruto-sama is left very red and feverish each time they visit, said a sorrowful Yor. Although Uzume's jokes were always light-hearted, her friend had made her intentions toward Naruto very apparent. She frequently flirted heavily with the blonde, making her intentions so obvious they could be used as windows. Naruto made an effort to show the girl respect and avoid her most aggressive flirting despite his guest's flirtatious behavior. Unfortunately, the girl couldn't help herself around Naruto, which seemed to make him more attractive to her. She even went so far as to let others know he is taken, by rubbing herself on his clothes, which made it difficult for the 3 residents to clean up. Whenever Uzume saw us, referring to Roberta and herself, needing help, she was always willing to help if we asked, which was great because it helped take a weight off our shoulders. Yor had no intention of disclosing to their guests that the reason was actually that she and Roberta were not very good at doing housework. Roberta made the decision to add her own thoughts. She is also quite strong. I believe Uzume managed to stop several blasts of Naruto-sama's water magic. Her friend is also quite strong, able to keep pace with myself and Yor-san when she pushes herself. The devils were shocked by this statement because some of them had first-hand knowledge of Roberta and Yor's strength. Additionally, this caused Kaneko to narrow her eyes with resolve and suspicion. Another rival, who was stronger than her, was now lusting after Naruto, which would not be acceptable. She had to get stronger if she wanted to keep Naruto and Rias to themselves. Roberta also started to reminisce, and her lips appeared to twitch. Ever since Uzume-san first saw Naruto-sama train with us, she always asked to train under us alongside Naruto-sama. I will admit she is quite strong as a fighter, however she is not at Naruto-sama's level, said Roberta. Ah, Roberta-san, that seems a little cold. After all, she stopped living with Naruto-sama after his magic was sealed. Also I understand that, however, if she wishes to be a mage guard like you or I or her friend, she needs to be stronger, especially with their promise. That made all of the girls' heads perk up. What promise? Inquired a curious Rias. Sona questioned, and what's a mage guard? With a radiant smile, Yor was too delighted to respond to Rias' query. Well, before this arranged marriage, Naruto-sama allowed Uzume-chan to watch one of his training sessions with his magic. When Naruto-sama was still allowed to learn magic, he was considered to be a mage and so needed his own mage guard. Crossing her arms beneath her breast, Rias reclined in her chair. As Yor went on with the story, she was captivated and didn't want to miss anything. Uzume-chan was a trainee that was assigned to Kazuhana-san, who is a close friend of Tsunade-san. She was so excited when she saw him practicing that she wanted to join him. It was so cute to watch them interact. Well, after some time together, Uzume-chan latched onto Naruto-sama's arm and said she was going to be his mage guard and stand by his side. Oh, it was so cute that we had to help them get strong. Even Kushina-sama agreed to that and allowed her to train under us when she had the time before going to Senior Shield School in Sendai, Japan. When she brought her new friend over, she too took a liking to Naruto-sama and challenged him to see how strong he was and why Uzume-san thought so highly of him. When Naruto-sama won, she soon declared she wanted to have babies with Naruto-sama. It was so cute to watch. But that's not right. Naruto-sama is too young to think about children right now. He needs to focus on his studies and get out of Esme-san's clutches so he can have a successful career. I mean, it was only at Uzume-chan and Kazuhana-san's insistence that we help with her training, but that doesn't mean she needs to insist on them having children so soon when she comes over, Yor said quickly, pacing back and forth like a mother hen. Behind Kaneko, there was a literal sound of something breaking. She pulled out a takoyaki out of nowhere and began nibbling on it while continuing to mumble to herself, all the while maintaining her stoic expression. Then it was Roberta's turn to talk. As for your question, Sona-san, I am sorry, but I cannot go into too much detail about them. However, I can give you a brief overview if that is acceptable. Sona smiled. Even though she was disappointed that she couldn't learn more, knowing the fundamentals would give her a solid foundation on which to plan how to research or deal with this new kind of adversary. A mage guard is what it sounds like, someone who guards a mage. As I'm sure many of you are aware, mages are weak in a physical confrontation, with some being exceptions. Each of the girls gave a nod of agreement. Well, to protect its members, the colleges of magic have a separate school where candidates can train to become incredible physical fighters to cover a mage in battle. Typically, they are assigned to mages as a sort of partnership. However, some are already staffed to a noble house like myself, while Kushina-sama extended an invitation to Yor-san when she concluded her tenure at the school. Sona asked, "So, a mage guard always works with a mage?" No. While not standard practice, both a mage and a mage guard can work independently. However, that is typically seen when the mage or mage guard are exceptionally powerful so as to not have to worry about a weakness to either range or melee combat, explained Roberta. What about those that aren't under the employ of a noble house? How are they assigned a partner? Asked Rias. Like the mages, they can submit a request for a mage during their final year or after completing their schooling, and they are then partnered up with those believed to be the best fit for them depending on their skills. If they did not request someone specific, where the partners will then take on jobs like a guild from one of Naruto-sama's anime. After the job is completed, they can then submit a separation request and find a new partner if they don't work well together. Some can agree to be partners to individual mages rather than houses, but that is typically done between close friends. When Rias learned that Naruto watches anime, her ears pricked up. She would have to see what he watches now that she was interested. Kaneko was the one who inquired, "Does Naruto have a mage guard?" While Rias was absorbed in her own world. Yor and Roberta both appeared quite depressed. No. Despite his strength as a mage, the contract removed him from being registered as one as his magic was sealed, Yor replied with sadness. However, it did not stop Uzume-chan from reaffirming her vow to become his mage guard when she freed him from his marriage contract. She even has help now from her friend once she explained that Naruto-sama was in an arranged marriage, said Roberta. Sona asked, if a mage has the appropriate skills, could they also be a mage guard, and can a mage guard marry a mage? To deflect the conversation from such a sour subject. The last part of the question caught Kaneko's attention, and Rias returned to Earth, curious to hear the response. Roberta appeared thoughtful, and Yor closed her eyes deeply. I'm sorry Sona-san, but I don't know. I guess if they have the right skills, but no one has done such a thing to my knowledge, Roberta apologized. Kaneko pressed, but what about the marriage? Roberta and Yor appeared perplexed. Yor said quite innocently, I don't see why not. Nothing says they can't. Kaneko then took out a large chocolate bar and began to eat it. Kaneko simply found another girl after Naruto if what they said was accurate. Kaneko also refuses to share with her, in contrast to Rias. Before long, you started to panic. Ah, Kaneko-san, please stop. You're going to ruin your appetite if you keep eating like that. With the assistance of Akeno, Kurama, and Matabi, Naruto emerged from the kitchen grinning as if on cue. Breakfast is ready, the blonde exclaimed. Everyone turned to look at the kitchen's entrance, where they saw Akeno carrying serving trays filled with fruits and syrups, Kurama emerging with sides like hash browns and bacon, and Matabi carrying 2 enormous pitchers of orange juice. Naruto was using his chains to carry a large set of plates containing pancakes. The smell of something very sweet emanating from the plates and trays caused Kaneko's nose to twitch. As she waited impatiently to bite into the food, she soon had stars in her eyes. Before they took their own seats, everyone sat down while Naruto and the others placed the food trays on the table. In order to be able to sit next to Naruto if she wanted to make fun of him during the meal, Akeno made a special effort to guard the seat across from Kaneko. After everyone was seated, Naruto explained that they had prepared a range of pancakes, including plain, chocolate chip, and blueberry or strawberry varieties. Kurama rolled his eyes at Matabi, who made the syrups as well. Matabi puffed out her chest in pride as her master praised her skills. After being given the all-clear, Kaneko snatched up a good number of chocolate chip pancakes, much to the glee of Rias and Naruto, while Sona's eyes conveyed her annoyance at her junior's ravenous appetite. The eyes of those who did not prepare breakfast widened before they hummed with pleasure as everyone started to eat. Roberta was complimented. I must say, Akeno-san, you indeed know how to cook. With a shy smile, Akeno accepted the compliment. She quickly raised the apron because she wanted to know who owned it. She also wanted to feel good about being larger than Naruto's former kitchen partner. Oh, That was a gift to Uzume-chan from Kazuhana-san. Sometimes she wanted to help Naruto-kun with the cooking, but she was more interested in tasting the food before anyone else, stated Yor. Kaneko interpreted the apron as a threat because Naruto blushed suddenly at the question. The person who gave Uzume the apron could give one to this unidentified girl, giving her the opportunity to steal Naruto. Sona and Rias are wondering about the apron in the meantime. When they noticed that bringing it up made Naruto blush so much, they became extremely curious and planned to locate the garment and determine why it made the blonde react that way. In the meantime, Akeno wondered if the same person who gave it to Uzume could tell her where to find an apron that would fit her well for cooking, of course. Akeno shrugged it off for later and saw that the container of plain syrup was gone from the table. She glanced around and saw that Kaneko was practically consuming the sweet condiment. Before long, Akeno had an idea that would let her enjoy herself with her kahai and made her laugh with delight. "Kaneko-chan, could you please pass the plain syrup?" Kaneko asked, looking directly into Akeno's eyes before turning back to her pancake pile without saying anything. Naruto responded to Kaneko's reaction by laughing at the exchange, which was the desired outcome. "I'm glad you like Matabi-chan's syrup, Kaneko-chan. She makes the best sauces that complement any meal," said the brunette. Akeno quickly attached herself to Naruto's arm, though. Holding Naruto's arm against her breast, Akeno whined, "Oh Naruto-kun. Kaneko-chan is being so mean. She's not sharing the syrup with me." Kaneko frowned at her senpai, and Naruto instantly laughed uneasily as his cheeks darkened from their position. Roberta looked at Kaneko and Akeno over the rim of her glasses and quietly threatened them not to make a scene at the table before anything could happen. Kaneko instantly gave up because he didn't want to fight Roberta just yet. When Akeno realized that Roberta can be very serious and what she could accomplish when motivated, she was a little more cautious. Her own cheeks were slightly flushed before returning to normal. Akeno also became calmer at those recollections. Following a brief pause, Akeno requested the syrup once more but was denied it a second time. As he looked at Matabi, who nodded as she used her claws to cut her next serving, Naruto said, "Kaneko-chan, can you please share with Akeno-chan? If you want more, I'm sure Matabi-chan will be happy to make you some more." "I'd be happy to make some for the little kitten," Matabi said, biting down on her pancakes. Kaneko's eyes widened as she turned to face the flaming Nekomadia, who just gave her a wink while she carried on eating. Kaneko reluctantly resumed her meal, allowing the sweetness and taste of her food to temporarily block out Matabi's remarks. Akeno leaned closer to Naruto, saying, "So Naruto-kun, you never answered my question in the kitchen." She was careful not to get too close lest Roberta or Yor say something and spoil her fun. When she asked, Naruto was in the process of swallowing his food and gave a slight cough. While Rias and Sona were eating, Naruto saw Kaneko staring at him. He couldn't take his eyes off of Akeno's big eyes as they gazed at him. An agitated Naruto remarked, "You were rather eye-catching, Akeno-chan." Akeno grinned joyfully as she returned to her meal after noticing that she had once again agitated Naruto. After breakfast, Roberta demanded that Naruto take his guests to the library so they could begin their work while she and Yor cleaned up. After all, Naruto's family will be happier the sooner they figure out a way for him to leave his arranged marriage. Rias would also be pleased since she would have at last managed to leave her marriage to her bitterly despised fiancé. Copyright. Regarding the dishes, Roberta offered to tidy the kitchen. Aware that Roberta had a point and frustrated by Rias and Kaneko's eagerness, Naruto reluctantly showed his guests his library out of concern for the innocent kitchenware. Sona was compelled to ask as they passed the spacious house, "Naruto-san, is this home owned by your father?" Naruto gave a headshake. "No, this is a home owned by my Ka-chan. It's why it's more Japanese than European in aesthetic." They soon discovered a sizable pair of double doors. Naruto grasped the door handles and started to pull the doors open, revealing the room in the process. Naruto exclaimed, "I present to you the Uzumaki family library." As he flung open the doors, Sona was astounded by what she saw when the doors opened. There was a library before her that was bigger than the U.S. Library of Congress and undoubtedly bigger than the house itself. Every bookshelf was 7 shelves high and made of deep mahogany. The layout of the floors was similar as they rose higher and higher to the ceiling. Although she saw a set of tables in the distance, she was unable to count the number of bookshelves she saw on the first floor alone. Sona had to ask, "Naruto-san, what is this library?" As he followed Naruto forward. Oh, this is the library of the Uzumaki family. It holds all the knowledge my Ka-chan's side of the family has gathered from the beginning of its days when they were still referred to as a clan. There are even texts from other species like devils and angels that they were willing to part with or were created by those who witnessed the events. So there are even texts about the laws of the underworld in here. And how is it so big? Sona gave the blonde a questioning look and said, yep. Even stuff from other pantheons, though the texts from the Greeks everyone avoids. Noting her expression, Naruto clarified, many of the Greek gods aren't exactly easy to talk to unless you're conversing with Hades or Hephaestus and Ares surprisingly. Because of that, it's not something I've taken a great interest in, though I still had to read some of the texts in case I had to meet any of them, stated Naruto. As for why it's so big, well, that's spatial magic. It allows the user to magically adjust the space of a person or place's location by either shifting their position on a plane or increase or decrease how much space an object or place takes up within the confines of another location. If you become really good at it, you could remove the space altogether and watch reality compensate in rather interesting ways to fill in the missing area. When he mentioned the Greeks, Sona nodded. When she had dealt with many of the Greek gods, she had occasionally heard her sister complain about their less than ideal manners, which they actively displayed. She still didn't understand how a whole civilization could put up with such gods. His description of the Greek gods made Rias perspire. He sounded as diligent as he had seemed in school, but she had to wonder if the Greeks were as good as they were described or worse. She did, however, catch on to the spatial magic. She could keep more of her hidden gems in her special room if she had it. As Rias started to think of ways to convince Naruto to teach her this magic, or at the very least, let her read about it in his library, a dark gleam came into his eyes. The group saw a number of three-seater couches that surrounded the tables for extra seating or more comfortable seating if one wasn't studying when they got to the tables Sona had seen from the entrance. With his hands extended and a broad smile on his face, Naruto turned to his peers and said, "Shall we get started?" The others gave him a blank stare. Rias asked, "How would we do that?" For a brief moment, Naruto appeared perplexed before realizing something. He apologized while scratching the back of his head. "Ah, sorry, I forgot you wouldn't know how the magic of the library works." "Baka hati," Kaneko muttered. Naruto extended his hand and started to describe the library's magic. He made a red magic circle before continuing, saying, "Well, the library only recognizes Uzumaki magic. Using our magic, we can call to us any book we want that covers any topic we can think of as long as it's in the library. But when you call a book, you need to be careful as it could a book that appeared to have come from behind Naruto struck him in the head. As his focus was disrupted, more books quickly rushed in and hit him in the face. As the girls laughed at his expense, he concluded his thoughts with a shake of his head, saying, hurt a bit." One of the book titles caught Sona's attention. "Barrier Magic. A Beginner's Guide to Protecting You and Your Allies," she read out loud. Then Sona turned to face Naruto. "Naruto-san, you wouldn't mind if I borrowed this, would you?" Naruto asked, raising an eyebrow as he glanced at the book's title. He smiled brightly at the girl and said, "Sure, you can borrow it, Sona-chan. And when you're done, just let me know." To everyone's surprise, the book quickly vanished from Sona's grasp. "I can then recall it to the library afterwards." He then extended his hand, formed a magic circle, and called forth the book, which he returned to Sona while maintaining a constant smile. The other books that Naruto had called vanished from the floor as well, most likely going back to the shelf from which they had been taken, and the others watched in wonder. Naruto said, "So where shall we start?" Everyone appeared to consider where to begin. Kaneko was the first to speak. Naruto nodded and held up his hand, saying, "Start with marriage laws for mages and devils." Wait, exclaimed a terrified Sona. With interest in what Sona would say, everyone looked at her. "We should narrow that down. Based on what Naruto-san said, we could get books that have little value in what we're looking for. I think we should start with laws that govern the arrangement of unions between houses and the initial rules created to oversee them. From there we can use the laws that benefit us and ensure they weren't overturned," said Sona. Naruto didn't see any objections when he looked around. Instead, he saw a stunned Rias, a thoughtful Akino, and a bored-looking Kaneko. As Sona adjusted her glasses, she noticed her friend's expression and grinned. Naruto shrugged his shoulders and used the rules Sona proposed to call the books. A number of books flew in their direction from the other side of the library, but Naruto was prepared this time and was able to deflect the blows. There were about 20 books in front of the group. Rias and Sona looked at the titles and acknowledged that they were unfamiliar with a few of them. The books quickly started to settle on the tables as he waved his hands together. Sona felt envious. Not merely envious, but extremely so. It would be wonderful to have the ability to call things to yourself from any location, even if it was limited to a single room. To make her life even easier, she promised to learn this magic and use it wherever she went. "All right everyone, let's get to it," Naruto exclaimed. After several hours of research, the devils and the mage have read through a number of books, returned a large number of others, and summoned a fresh set to supplement their recent discoveries. Kaneko had taken over one of the couches during their time in the library, using it to sit up or lie down and read on her stomach, depending on how she was feeling. After checking on them, Roberta brought Sona and Naruto, who had taken to sitting at a table and taking notes in composition books. When Rias saw that the two were occasionally reviewing their notes, she joined them. Akeno then followed suit, even inviting Kaneko to join them, but the white-haired girl simply said, "Soon." The two heiresses should be expected to have a knack for this kind of research, but Akeno seemed to have all the luck because many of her notes were turning out to have the right questions to ask for more information that seemed to bring them closer to their goal. Soon after, Kaneko pulled up a chair to sit beside Naruto on his free side, her finger clearly marking the book she was reading. Then, to get everyone's attention, she slammed her book onto the table. Naruto read the passage that Kaneko indicated in her book. Naruto's eyes widened as he read the passage. Yor entered the library with a tray of tea and some menacing-looking snacks before anyone could discuss what Naruto had read. "Hello everyone, I hope you are doing well." They turned to face the voice and saw Yor approaching them. Akeno said, "Hello Yor-san," and the others soon followed. "We're doing great Yor-san. Kaneko-chan here may have just found the linchpin to our argument," Naruto exclaimed, giving Kaneko a head rub similar to what he would do for Kurama and Matabi. Based on her body language, Kaneko was obviously enjoying this. "Ah, that's great Naruto-sama. Oh, I made everyone some cookies as a snack to help you study." Yor laughed. Naruto panicked upon hearing this, but it was too late. Some of the cookies had already been consumed by Rias, Akeno, and Kaneko. The Sea-Tree heiress gave Naruto a perplexed look as he acted swiftly and grabbed the cookie from Sona's hand. Her question was quickly answered when she heard 3 loud crashes behind her, followed by Yor's terrified cries. Sona swiftly turned to see Rias, Akeno, and Kaneko unconscious on the ground, a gloomy aura hovering over their heads. Sona slowly withdrew her hand from the cookie plate and then pushed the plate away from her as she assessed the scene.